Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Port Phillip City Council. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of this land, the people of the Kulin Nations. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continued relationship to this land. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid style and is streamed via Council's webcast page and Facebook Live. Streams and recordings of Council meetings are copyrighted and cannot be altered, reproduced, or republished without the permission of Council. If we experience any technical difficulties this evening, we will adjourn the meeting for a short time to resolve the issue. I remind attendees that any member of the public addressing Council must extend due courtesy and respect to Council and the process under which it operates, and must take direction from the Chair, myself, whenever called on to do so. Speakers must remain respectful, and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive, or objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of Council staff, or relate to a matter outside the powers of the Council. The first item we will discuss tonight is apologies, and I note that everyone's in the room, so there are no apologies tonight. We'll move on to the minutes of the previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes of the Council meeting on the 6th of March 2024 have been circulated. Are there any questions of these minutes? No. If not, I'll have a motion to have a councillor move a motion to accept these minutes. Councillor Martin and Councillor Bond, was that your hand? Sorry, thank you. Could be a little slower for me. Thank you. All those for this motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. On to declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest in a matter being discussed at tonight's meeting? All right, Councillor Bond, we'll start with you.
I don't have a conflict of interest, but I do have an interest in item 7.2, which is a petition coming to Council on the Esplanade Hotel Parklet, which I will declare at the time.
Is that fine at the item? I'm being advised that we'll need it at the item, at the item and at the beginning. If you could do the beginning part, please.
I, Andrew Bond, have an interest in item 7.2, the petition for the Esplanade Hotel Grand Prix Street Party, in that I reside in the SV Apartments, which is where the petition has originated from. However, I don't have a conflict of interest, as I derive no financial benefit from the SVGP Street Party proposal. I don't believe there's any amenity impact on me or my apartment resulting from the SVGP Street Party proposal, and I haven't had any discussions about this event or petition with anyone who resides in my building.
Thank you. Any other councillors declaring a conflict of interest? Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to declare an interest in relation to item 17.1, the independent waste review. I've previously declared material and general conflicts of interest when councils considered items directly related to waste issues due to my employment in the sector. I reviewed the details of the report being considered at tonight's meeting, and in line with the Local Government Act and Council's governance rules, I have not identified a direct conflict of interest. Out of an abundance of caution and the interest of transparency, I'm declaring the interest to ensure the community is aware of my considerations. I will continue to monitor my position, and if I determine that a conflict of interest does exist during the discussion of this item, I will disclose it and remove myself from all or part of the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further declarations? CEO?
Through you, Mayor, I have a potential for a perception of material or a general conflict of interest in relation to item 10.4, Council's submission to Victorian Government Fishermans Bend Urban Renewal Area Development Contributions Plan. I've recently become a director of a trust. That trust holds an interest in a managed fund. That managed fund holds an interest in a very small one, in a very, very large company, Goodman's. Goodman's is one of the key landowners in Fisherman's Bend. I'm getting further advice. I feel it may not be a conflict, but I have not taken part in finalisation of that report when I became aware of that interest.
Thank you. Last call for conflicts of interest declarations. Thank you. All right. We will now hear all public questions and submissions on report items. Under Council's governance rules, questions can only be asked about items not on the agenda. Therefore, if you're speaking to an agenda item tonight, please note I will not refer these to an officer for a response. However, a councillor may wish to take up the question on your behalf when the item is considered. Now, there's quite a lot of you here tonight. We always welcome the public at our meetings. I have, I believe, 31 on my list, so we will be sticking to the 2-minute rule. And I know that's short when you're up there, but it's to try to make sure that we can make decisions tonight in a timely manner as well. So I will go to my list. I'll call you up. So you come to this chair. This is for the people who've been here many times or the first timers. Come down to the chair. Is the light on? Can anybody see if there's a red light on it already? Okay, thank you. If the red light's on, the mic's on, so you don't need to turn it on and off. It should remain on. There will be some people joining us online, and there'll be most of you here in person. I'll say your name. I'll call your name. You'll come down, say your full name and your suburb for the record, please. And you'll be given 2 minutes. We have a handy buzzer up here. It's a bit loud, but you'll know clearly when that 2 minutes is up. So thank you very much. Let's get started. I call upon Helen Taylor submitting a question to Council.
Thank you, Mayor. Helen Taylor, resident of Port Melbourne. The question I have for Council is, can you please clarify if Lagoon Reserve will be considered a specialised sports field, and is there any plans to change the current open space usage of this facility? You also have 263 sporting members currently for Lagoon Reserve. Can Council please clarify if these members are actual rate-paying residents of Port Phillip?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to refer to Dana Pritchard, I believe. Are you online, Dana? Okay, good. All right, so Dana's online.
Through you, Mayor, the specialised sports grounds that are specified in the Dog Off-Leash report are grounds which are maintained to host premier level sports. So these grounds are Northport Oval and Pitch 1 at JL Murphy Reserve. Both these grounds are currently also not currently dog off-leash areas. Lagoon Reserve will not be considered a specialised sports ground as it's been built to community level competition. Lagoon Reserve's an important element in our open space network that provides for a range of users, including sports clubs. So sports clubs across Port Phillip are comprised of a number of Port Phillip residents, as sports participants are more readily connected to clubs in their local area. We don't collect statistics exactly who is a resident and who isn't at the moment with regards to members of sports clubs. And there's no changes proposed to the existing dog off-leash status at Lagoon Reserve.
Thank you, Dana. Now, Helen, I also have you registered to speak to item 10.2, the draft dog off-leash guidelines. Right. If you're prepared and you're sitting there, you're welcome to speak to that now.
Absolutely, thank you. I'd like to speak on item 10.2 and specific questions for councils. In reading these guidelines, they affect over 8,000 families. Point 4.7.4, it states that there are several off-leash areas bordering the municipality, including Kingsway, Fence Dog Park, Faulkner Park and Elstonwick Park. I believe this isn't acceptable in the report and respectfully request that it be removed, as it should focus on what's within the city of Port Phillip. Point 4.10, which is subject to community consultation, councils look to designate more public open spaces across networks as dog-free. This would mean that dogs would not be permitted in some areas, both off and on. I believe that this statement is very open-ended, and combined with 2.4, this could impact dog owners greatly. I request that council submit a recommendation that should be within these guidelines, balancing the number of playgrounds, beaches, specialised sports fields, for us to see the bigger picture to ensure that this is not a serious reduction in dog off-leash spaces within our community. The draft report feels very exclusive, and I appreciate it as a draft, and I would like to think that our community is more inclusive. As you mentioned, this affects more than 8,000 families. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I call upon Alex Darton submitting a question to council. Oh, this is here. Yeah. Hello, Alex. Now, I'll also give you the opportunity to, if you want, because you've registered for also 14.1, do you want to speak at that back to back, or do you want to come back up later when it's more in order?
I can do it back to back, I think.
Yeah? Okay. All right. Go ahead and start with your submitting a question to council, please.
So my question to council it's because of the last,
Name and
Alex
suburb.
Darton, Elwood.
Thank you.
Mayor, councillors, officers. We had a heat wave recently, so this is referencing that. My question to council is, at night when heat waves do the most damage to the health of our residents, what can COP do to help those in social housing, both long-term and in the immediate? This also comes from a study that I was in that just put their report out 2 days ago, or yesterday, sorry, for renters in housing during heat waves, and it turns out it's 3 degrees hotter in rented apartments as it is in those owned by the individual. Then the lack of aircon or even fans, which is not mandated in these houses, though not council's responsibility, has a massive effect on the health of our residents. A recent report again showed about 70% of social housing do not have aircon or fans, so these heat waves are really bad for them. And can we be focusing our greening projects on or around these places? This is also from last night, the forum on the urban heat island effect that I believe some of you were at. That was very informative, but it showed the need for the urban forest to be helping residents. So these ones in most need, how can we push it towards them? So that's my question for council.
Thank you. I'll refer to Tanya McKenzie.
Thanks for your question, Alex. Through you, Mayor. As part of Council's extreme weather response, Council provides heat response information and links, hot weather preparation advice, and our important partnerships with services and support activity responding through the course of the heatwave. Council is also working on a new urban forest strategy, which is currently under development and is considering how greening be used to cool the city. This will include focusing attention for greening projects on areas of most need.
Thank you. And for item 14.1?
Yes, so I'll ask you to speak to item 14.1. This is the notice of motion from Councillor Rhonda Clark about rates freeze.
So the reason I'm speaking on this is I noticed renters were mentioned in this as basically a knock-on effect from freezing the rates. So basically what I'm saying is that I believe renters are ratepayers. We pay it through our rent. It's about 5% of my annual rent, but we are ratepayers. So any council member that supports this should also support a rent freeze, because half of your residents are renters and therefore in the same position as the ones you, I think, believe are ratepayers. So anyone who supports this should support rent freezes in any form. That is all.
Thank you. All right, I call upon Jeanette Conwell, submitting a question to council. Hello, Jeanette.
Hi.
Name, suburb, and you'll have 2 minutes, please.
Sorry, what was that?
Name and suburb, and then we'll do your 2 minutes.
Okay. Right, the increase in homelessness in Melbourne is...
Sorry, can I just pause you? Can you say your full name and your suburb? We just need it for the record when we record the meeting. So if you say your full name and what suburb you live in, then you'll get started.
Okay, sorry, this is my...
No, that's right. Thank you. Welcome for your first time.
Okay, my name is Jeanette Conwell, and I live at St Kilda. And is that it?
Yep, good to go.
The increase in homelessness in Melbourne is a significant social issue. In Port Phillip, there is 29 homeless people sleeping rough, and 56 people sleeping, and 56 actively homeless people, which means living in cars or temporary crisis accommodation. It's crucial to address the root causes and provide support, rather than just moving people on, which does not solve the underlying problem. Move-on directions are often given to people sleeping rough and can result in legal charges if escalated. These laws are criticised for potentially being discriminatory and not addressing the real needs of homeless individuals. Enforcing such laws can have a detrimental effect on those without a home, leading to a cycle of fines, legal issues and further entrenchment of poverty. So my question is, what are the move-on rules or laws for homeless people sleeping rough on the streets of Port Melbourne and actively homeless people living in cars as well?
Thank you. I'm going to refer to Brian T. to respond to your question.
Thank you for your question, and through you, Mayor. Council has a proud record of supporting the most vulnerable in our community, including rough sleepers, and we also understand and believe in the importance of addressing the underlying causes. Council officers, including through our local laws officers, are in regular contact with rough sleepers, and we look to engage them with services, be that drug and alcohol, homelessness services, and provide whatever other supports we can. We've also provided, last year, we opened up in near Balaclava Station 30 apartments for those at most risk of homelessness. That was in a former car park, a council car park, which is still in place underneath the building. And this year, construction has commenced on another project for about 30 apartments in Wellington Street, which has got a substantial council funding contribution. Specifically in relation to move-on powers, our local laws do not have any move-on powers. They are primarily a responsibility for police. In relation to your question about people sleeping in cars, council does have a local law 42, which deals with camping, and that makes it illegal to sleep, or it makes it a breach of the local law to sleep, to camp, including in a car on public land, including car parks. There is, however, an exception in that local law which provides that it's not an offence to sleep in a car if you are homeless.
Thank you.
So
sorry, we won't be able to go back and forth, but you are more than welcome to come to another council meeting or send us an email if you'd like to keep that conversation going.
Okay,
Good?
thank you very much.
Thank you. I now call upon Penny Nichols, speaking to item 14.1, the notice of motion by Councillor Clark for rates freeze, and I believe Penny is online. Do we have Penny? Penny, can you hear us?
I can hear.
Oh, fantastic. We can hear you. So name, suburb,
Great.
in 2 minutes.
So Penny Nichols, resident of Elwood. So I have lived in City of Port Phillip for over 30 years and been a ratepayer since 2012. And I thank Councillor Clark very much for bringing this motion to the meeting today. I'm strongly supportive of a rates and charges freeze for 2024-25 for the following reasons. Our community is experiencing financial hardship due to the ongoing cost of living crisis that is hurting all families and single people. Rates relief is required to help all residents deal with the high cost of living pressures when many residents are struggling to make ends meet or struggling with job loss or wage reduction. City of Port Phillip has some of the highest rates in Victoria and are well above that of our surrounding councils, Stonington and Bayside and Glen Ira, that have comparative value properties, plus have close to double the workforce. Why is this? What checks and balances are in place to assess productivity of said workforce, as would be the case in private industry? Stonington, in particular, and Bayside have considerably greater area to service than City of Port Phillip. We have a similar population and number of properties. We are smaller in area and in total our roads are shorter in length. We don't have more assets than the other councils. However, these other councils manage to provide all the same services and more on much less rates, income with less council staff for comparative house value. Cost savings may be achieved by focusing on the basic services that residents expect from councils, such as maintaining parks, roads, footpaths, waste collection, flood mitigation and planning. The council should stop duplicating state government responsibilities, such as affordable housing and homelessness. Cost savings can be found by rejecting ill-disciplined motions that are brought by councillors outside of our budget process, creating precedents for all other organisations to request funding that really doesn't benefit community or aren't at local level. We are required to find a very small 1.6% efficiency on total expenditure in the budget to freeze our rates and provide a much needed relief. I ask all councillors to consider these important points when it comes time to vote for this very important
Penny.
motion.
I'll need to stop you there. Thank you.
That's finished.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we have several questions tonight about the Pickle Street safety improvements that we considered at the last, or maybe 2 council meetings ago. Under Rule 51.8 of Council's governance rules, I will group these questions together to ask officers to provide one consolidated response. So I believe there's about 8 of them. So you'll come up, say your name, suburb, you'll have up to 2 minutes. You don't have to take a full 2 minutes to ask the question. We'll get the next one up, and when we've all gone through the list, we'll refer to an officer to give a full response. If someone before you has already asked the question you want, you do not have to come up. It's up to you. But if you register, you have a right, or you're welcome to speak. So I'm going to call upon Philip Edmonds submitting a question to Council. Hello, Philip.
Hi. Phil Edmonds from South Melbourne. And as my question really is whether more time will be allowed to determine what should happen given the recent decision in relation to that Pickles median treatment. There seems to be a view now that because the permanence vote wasn't carried, nothing can be done. And perhaps without more, that might be true, but clearly Council can do more. It is the responsible authority, so it has the statutory duty of care to make the intersection safe. So it obviously must have the power to control what is done there, and that power to fulfil its statutory duty would never be abrogated by a procedural rule. It could rescind its earlier decision and replace it with a more nuanced one. It could add to it, it could stay its effect, etc. And Council needs to do more. This is potentially a life and death issue. Council has addressed the safety issues at the intersection with the median treatment. If it is simply removed with no replacement mitigation, that will recreate the hazard as a positive act by Council in breach of its duty of care under the Road Management Act. This is not to say that the main objection, preserving right access into bridge from Pickles, shouldn't be looked at. It should. But more thought, consultation and analysis is required, and in the interim, the protection that the median provides should remain. Otherwise, objectively, the exercise would look like a tactical means of quickly getting rid of the median for non-safety related reasons, knowing that getting something else up may take another 10 years. If the median is to be removed, the reasons for doing so need to withstand examination and cross-examination as justifying any resultant serious injury or death. It's submitted that there are no reasons of that nature advanced, certainly none on record. But in any event, as a minimum, it's hard to see why you wouldn't just allow a few extra months to review and analyse and stay anything until that can be done.
Thank you, Phil. Who wants to talk to that? CEO?
Through you, Mayor, just in accordance with Rule 76, I do thank the person for providing the submission tonight. I just wanted to clarify under the governance rules that a notice of rescission motion, so we couldn't rescind this because that has to be done within a certain amount of time, it'd be 24 hours post-resolution, so that time has passed. But there are other avenues for Council to consider in terms of if it wishes to revisit that decision.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have Katrina Barlow online? Okay. So
yes,
yep, Katrina Barlow submitting a question to Council. Katrina, can you say your name, suburb, and then we'll give you that 2 minutes.
Absolutely. My name is Katrina Barlow and I live in Port Melbourne. I wanted to backfill in what he just said then in asking if Council would please take some time to consider holding off on making a decision about that current median treatment at the intersection of Pickles Bridge and Glover Streets for community consultation. I believe current state has been successful in removing Bridge Street as a thoroughfare, is the only direct route, say, for example, from Williamstown Road through to South Melbourne Albert Park. And it's reduced the bottleneck at the intersection where I live near off Bridge Street. The risk has decreased purely from preventing cars from being able to turn right, as they very often did from Bridge into Pickle Street. Very dangerous attempting to cross the 2 lanes or 4 lanes of traffic, if you like, from there, all going straight on, which very, very risky additionally, except for on a weekend, for example. It's right now it's resulted in those pathways being blocked off. And as an affected resident close to the area, I have noticed, as have my neighbours, that we previously were boxed in at peak hour during those times. Such were the bottlenecks appearing at that intersection as each wave of traffic would sweep through with cars still at the intersection looking to turn right or go straight on. I do ask again, is there any way we might be able to be consulted about any change with any decision to be held off?
Thank you. We'll now call upon Mary Marias O'Neill submitting a question to Council. Hi, Mary.
Maurice O'Neill. I live with my husband at 21 Glover Street, South Melbourne. We're incredulous that the median strip in Pickle Street is being removed Previously, cars accelerating across Pickle Street could reach speeds of up to 60 kilometres or more by the time they passed our house, and would then have to brake sharply to avoid sliding into the Ifla Street intersection. The median strip stopped that almost immediately. We right-angle park, so backing out is now much safer. Albert Park College on the corner of Pickles and Richardson Street has resulted in increased numbers of children on bikes and scooters, etc. Removing the median strip would put those children at greater risk. In the 34 years that we've lived in Glover Street, the median strip has been the single greatest initiative for our neighbourhood safety. Given the unequivocal evidence of no more accidents and reduced speed since it was introduced, my question to Council is, who is going to take responsibility for the inevitable consequences of this reckless and dangerous decision?
Thank you. I call upon Jefferson Penberthy, submitting a question to Council. Hello, Jefferson.
Thank you. At this point, I think I will simply endorse...
Can you start with your name and suburb? Name and suburb for the record, please. If you can say your name and suburb and then start your question, please.
I'm Jeff Penberthy. I'm from Glover Street, South Melbourne.
Thank you.
And a 41-year resident of the city of Port Phillip. I previously lived in Mary Street and moved to Glover Street in 2016. When I first raised concerns at a meeting at Port Melbourne Town Hall convened by Bernadette Voss to discuss problems with the Pickle Street intersections. At that stage, they were looking at Dank Street and Pickle Street, and I raised the question of crossing from Glover to Bridge and vice versa. And I simply felt that it had an immense impact on me at that time, the dangers of that intersection. Members of our group of residents who've spoken already here just asked me to simply try and explain the reasons why this intersection is so dangerous, why it was attracting 5 or 6 accidents a year. And it's really because of the oblique nature of the intersection that where it crosses, it's not a straight crossing. It comes from an oblique angle, and there is parking along both sides of Pickle Street which come up to the property boundary corners of those streets. I paced it out today. It's 20 paces. You have to detect a car coming from your left if you were attempting to cross that intersection. And on the traffic coming along that oblique angle are further obscured by some large tree plantings on the tree and shrub plantings on the Dorcas Street side of the intersection, if I can put it that way, which is the most perilous area.
Do you have a question that you're bringing? Because this is the opportunity to ask a question, given that it's not on the agenda tonight. Is there a question that you're putting to the council officers?
Yes, I simply co-join my request that further consideration be given to the safety initiatives that can be instituted, and to, if the council will consider withholding the removal of the divider until a satisfactory alternative is...
Thank you. I call upon Paul Field, submitting a question. Hello, Paul.
Paul Field, Bridge Street, Port Melbourne. Many of the points were already raised, but I've got kids at Elwood Park College, and my concern is that when they're walking down to APC, it's quite dangerous with if the median strip was to be removed. But the question is, just leave it there. Can we just leave it there?
Thank you for making that a question. All right, thank you, Paul. I call upon David Reid, submitting a question. Hello, David.
David Reid, South Melbourne. My question to Council is whether the decision to potentially remove the median strip at the intersection of Pickles Bridge and Glover Streets is in the best interest of safety. No doubt everyone has read the engineer's reports and technical submissions, but there's a more personal element than this. I've lived at the end of Glover Street, one house away from the intersection, for close to 11 years with my wife and now 9-year-old son. We feel very passionate about the safety of the junction, having witnessed many incidents over the years. The location and orientation of our house means we are often the first to see, hear or witness an accident. The 6 accidents that occurred within the monitoring period I feel don't accurately reflect the full story. There were many more just within this period that were not reported. Prior to any kind of investigation into improving the junction, there were too many to count. My wife and I, along with other neighbours, have assisted many accident victims, whether it simply be bringing them a glass of water, a cup of tea or a chair. We've talked to people through the windows of their cars while we wait for emergency services to come and prise the door open or to assess their injuries. I've personally on many occasions swept up the crash debris from the road. From my experience, most accidents or near misses were due to traffic wanting to turn right out of Bridge Street onto Pickles or similarly turn right out of Glover onto Pickles, crossing 4 lanes of high volume traffic with limited visibility in both directions. To me and my family, the median strip has been a resounding success. It's achieved exactly what it set out to achieve, 0 accidents. We appreciate it's a slight inconvenience, including to the residents of Glover Street, but we must prioritise safety over convenience. I'm an engineer in the construction sector. Every year I see hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions made in the name of progress, speed and convenience, but all have one core consideration, and that's safety. Removing the medium strip in Pickle Street and opening the road to its original uncontrolled state, especially as this junction falls within a designated school zone, would not be in the best interests of safety for either the road users or pedestrians who use it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I call upon Terence Coynes to submit a question as well. Hello, Terence.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Terence Coyne from Glover Street, long-term resident of the city of Port Phillip since, I think, 1982. So my question is to all the councillors, and certainly no disrespect intended and not intending to impugn any individual councillor or group of councillors, but my question is fully supports other comments that have been made tonight, but is more general in its nature about process. Because I believe that, well, I think we'd all agree, fair-minded people would agree, that ethics and values are extremely important in all decision-making. And ethics and values ought rightfully to, as a general quote, trump convenience and expediency. So my question basically concerns the Pickle Street intersection. Has the council, this decision been based on an ethics, fact-based rationale, or has it been more likely to be driven by expediency and convenience? So the follow-up questions that go with this, is the decision that's been made consistent with council values? And I've studied council values about health and safety and well-being of people. And the second part of that decision, even though a decision's been made, is it still not too late to change that? It may be difficult, but it's important. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Dale Perkins submitting a question to Council. Hello, Dale.
Thank you. I'm Dale Perkin, South Melbourne. I live 4 properties from the intersection concerned, and I have 2 children. So my question is, with the motion to make the safety improvement permanent being lost in a split vote, Council should consider that removing a safety improvement, given a successful trial, may breach its duty of care under the Road Management Act by reverting the intersection to a known dangerous state. Instead, will Council leave the safety improvement in place until an alternative approach addressing any remaining concerns can be agreed and trialled?
Thank you. I think this is the last one on this item. I call upon Jennifer Taylor submitting a question to Council. Was there anybody else who thought they registered tonight just to ask a question about Pickles and Bridge? No? All right, then you're lucky last, Jennifer.
Jennifer Taylor from South Melbourne. My question is why, if the objectives of the pilot island have been met, namely to avoid life-threatening accidents from occurring and highly dangerous speeds of vehicles driving down non-arterial roads, why did the Council vote against the recommendation of the traffic engineers to make the island permanent? And why was there no consultation with the affected residents, given the importance of such a decision? I moved to South Melbourne 14 years ago, and crossing that road is terrifying, was terrifying. It was utterly dangerous to turn right. It was utterly dangerous to cross over the road. It was dangerous as well living at that end of Glover Street due to the speed that people reached as they crossed that intersection. You were already at a huge speed just to get over. Children were at risk. Animals, cats were continuously being killed. Dogs were unsafe. And it was a relief when that island came in. It was safer, it was calmer, and it may not have been as convenient, but it was a total relief in terms of safety. A few weeks prior to the vote, I was on the grapevine told that the decision that the island was going to be removed prior to any meeting here. I don't understand how that could have been said before a vote. I'd like to know why that was the case. I rang the council and I was advised that no, it was in place, it had met the objectives and it was there and I didn't need to worry. And then next I hear, without any consultation, that it had been removed. I want to know why.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Now, I would like to foreshadow that I intend to raise a notice of motion at an upcoming council meeting, which may address some of the concerns that you've and the issues you've raised tonight. Now, that may be at the 17th of April meeting or the 1st of May. I'll now hand over to the General Manager of City Growth and Development, Brian T., to respond to provide responses to the questions you've asked. But the point is that I intend to bring this to a future council meeting that we will discuss further options. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thank those who submitted a question. The questions generally related to the extent of community engagement, the safety issues, and the request, as I understood it, was to effectively seeking more time, further consideration of these matters. By way of background and context, the decision was made by Council to commence the trial, having received 3 petitions, 1 for, 1 against, and providing an alternative, and 1 seeking an alternative solution. That was in August 2021, and the trial has then been in place since June 2022, and residents were advised of the commencement, prior to the commencement of the trial, of the trial's commencement. On the 21st of February, Council reviewed the facts, as it were, reviewed the community feedback that had been received before, during and after the trial, reviewed the crash statistics, again before and during the trial, noting that the barrier or the prohibition against crossing the median is still in place, and considered other matters such as the impact on the surrounding streets. Council made a decision at that meeting to not continue with the trial and to not make the installation permanent, and the usual course would then be for that trial to be removed. Noting that the Mayor has indicated that she's foreshadowed a notice of motion, what Council officers intend to do is to leave the current position in place until that notice of motion has been brought to Council and considered and determined by council. So in essence, the trial will continue, the status quo will continue until the matter has been considered again by council, which, as the Mayor has indicated, cannot be before the next meeting, which is after Easter on the 17th of April.
Thank you, Brian. We will now move into public submissions. These are not questions that we'll refer, but if a councillor wants to take up the item, the question you may raise, they can do so. So I call upon Jen Bishop speaking to item 7.1. This is a petition request extension of Elwood Beach Dog off-leash access. Hello, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor.
Is the button on? Is it still red? It sounds a bit quiet.
1, 2.
Oh, there you go. You're closer. So name, suburb, and 2 minutes, please.
Jen Bishop, Elwood. I've walked this stretch of beach for the past 22 years. The petition is really a very modest request, which is about extending the current area that we're walking dogs off lead for about an additional 500 metres before 9:30am of 5 months of the year. So in the last month, we've collected 308 handwritten signatures from residents and beachgoers to support this modest, safe and equitable extension for a short period of time, daylight, 2 hours. What I learned from speaking with 300 Elwood residents about this area, out of the 308 people, 300 didn't know that they were walking illegally on the beach. And extending this to the rock groin is the natural end part of Elwood Beach, which is easy for dogs and humans to recognise rather than an invisible line. So why this is modest, safe and equitable? Lack of any alternative use before 9:30am. I've provided you with a series of 7 photos on different days before 9:30am that show that there's literally 0 people walking along that area of the beach. So we're not getting in anyone's way, upsetting anyone. It's really, important for people's health and wellbeing. They have that access. It's safe. If people wish to walk away from dogs, they've got that area from the sailing club all the way to Head Street, so it's not impacting them. They can choose to walk down there. And after 9:30, they've got all of the time of the day and the evening. Dogs are actually prohibited on Elwood Beach besides that 9:30 time slot, so they've got the entire day and evening to not worry about dogs. So it's a very short area and a very short period of time. It's equitable, it's a fair and logical change. We know the pet census data said 41% of people actually own a dog now in Victoria, and Elwood actually has a higher density in terms of that dog population, so we're talking 50%. So we're here representing 50% of our local Elwood population who has a dog, and we just want a reasonable access to that area.
Thank you, Jen. I'll have to stop you there, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll call upon Kat John, also speaking to 7.1, the petition for Elwood Dog Beach. Hello, Kat.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep, Kat John from Elwood. As a representative of our local community and resident of Elwood of 10 years, I'm here advocating for a small but significant adjustment to our beloved dog beach regulations during the summer period. Our proposal is simply to extend the off-lead dog area from Point Almond Rock to Elwood Angling Club up until 9:30am. The current off-lead cut-off is the car park, less than halfway down the beach. It makes little logical sense, is poorly signed and results in confusion, unnecessary angst, unnecessary fines and hostile arguments between local laws officers and respectful dog owners on the beach. I'm not sure how many of you walk on the beach before 9:30am during the summer, but I do it every single day alongside these awesome humans. And the reality is, even during summer, there are little to no beachgoers at this time beyond dog walkers and icebergers. So the reality is that the change will not actually impact anyone negatively, as no one but dog owners are using the beach at this time. This simple extension would provide dog owners with additional peace, space and time to enjoy the beach in the early hours of the morning when the beach is quieter and more conducive to off-lead activities. We fully appreciate the importance of the regulations that govern our beaches, particularly when it comes to ensuring the safety and enjoyment of all beachgoers. We also acknowledge and respect the needs of our fellow community members who prefer a dog-free environment when people and families are enjoying picnics and the beach with their young children. However, as I have said, these people simply are not using the beach at the time that we are. As such, this request is really a no-brainer. There is no logical reason why the entire beach can't be made off-lead until 9:30am. This change would impact only dog walkers who are already on the beach, and the impact would be positive. Additionally, by doing so and having clearer and easier to understand signage, it becomes obvious to all the community what the regulations are, and we can create a harmonious and inclusive beach environment. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Lisa Gumbleton speaking to the same petition.
Excuse me, Mayor, could I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Clark has a question. I think probably for you, Kat. Yep.
So I regularly walk along the Elwood foreshore as well, and I regularly see dog owners breaching all the rules, albeit they are difficult to follow, and paying no respect to dogs off leash where they're not meant to be. So would part of the petition, or the people supporting this petition, would you be accepting of an increased enforcement so that where people, all dog owners, are breaching all the rules, you would be supportive of council then fining people for doing the wrong thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll have to keep moving.
Yeah.
You guys can take this up later, please. I call upon Lisa Gumbleton, also speaking to the same petition. Thank you. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, thank you. Lisa Gumbleton, Elwood. So I have been living in Elwood for a short time compared to a lot of people here. I feel like a bit of an invader, but I've only been living there for 4 years. I've come from Stonington previously, where I had access to a very large off-lead park, so off-leash parks are really important to me. I walk along the beach, particularly in summer, in the morning between that 5:30 to 9:30 time period, and that's because it's sunny, it's less windy, it's warmer, and it's generally just a more inviting environment. And obviously those are the months where we have restricted access. So in the morning the beach is quiet and peaceful, and as they've said, it's really only dog walkers and the odd swimmer who are actually there on the beach. So I actually enter from the city side, so the Point Ormond side. And up until speaking to Jen, I actually had no idea that I was crossing an invisible line and breaking the law or the rules. You know, this invisible line that we talk about, or that's talked about, it's like many dog owners are actually breaking that if they come in from that side, because if you exit the beach at the Anglers Club, then you haven't seen another sign at the rotunda that says that it's a two-way kind of rule. So unwittingly we have been breaking the law, but it's also good to note that it's actually impossible to train dogs and humans to invisible line to the shore, from the rotunda to the shore, and draw that line. So I just want to make that point. I guess there's a safety and wellbeing point that I want to talk to, and that is the ability for dogs to run, play and swim in that area.
I'll have to stop you there, but thank you very much, Lisa, and we're glad to have you in Port Phillip. I now call upon Jan Nicholson, also speaking to the same petition.
Jan Nicholson, Elwood, and I'm also glad to have Lisa in Elwood as well. I'm going to address the environmental issues associated with our petition to request an extension of the length of the dog off-leash area. Specifically, we argue that there are not going to be any adverse impacts environmentally, and that there may in fact be some benefits. Dog poo is a significant concern in our community, and unfortunately in Elwood we do have quite a number of irresponsible dog owners who do not notice or choose not to pick up their dog's poo. I am intensely frustrated and offended by the poo in our footpaths and nature strips, and along the canal in particular. Dog poo is not an issue at the Elwood Beach, and our petition will not increase it as an issue. Owners who take their dogs to the beach between 5:30 and 9:30 in the morning are there playing with, swimming with and interacting with their dogs. They are not standing in groups chatting, and they are not glued to their phones. They're actually enjoying the environment they're in. As a result, they're more likely to notice and to pick up their dog's poo. Secondly, many of us who go to the beach in the early morning are on the whole very environmentally aware and do not wish to spoil that wonderful part of our community. Two of those who are here tonight, Jen and Kat, are two of the three people who every morning are picking up rubbish on the beach while they're doing their work. So if we extend the area that they're walking along, you're extending the amount to which your community members are picking up rubbish for you. We contend that increasing the length of the beach will not substantially change the numbers or the types of people who are accessing the beach at those times. As the others have noticed, the vast majority who take their dogs to the beach already believe that the full area is dog accessible off-leash, and so the numbers aren't going to change because most of us believe we couldn't do it anyway.
Thank you, Jen. I'll now call upon Richie McFarlane speaking to item 7.2. This is a petition, Esplanade Hotel Grand Prix Street Party, 22 to the 24th of March. Hello, Richie. Name, suburb, and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Richie McFarlane. I'm from St Kilda, and good evening, everybody here. I don't need to tell everybody today about how iconic the SB Hotel is and what it brings to the city of Port Phillip. People come to the city of Port Phillip to enjoy the SB amongst the other attractions here. Another reason they come to the city of Port Phillip is the part of the great activations and events calendar that Council has, and in the Australian Grand Prix you've got the granddaddy of them all. You've got 500,000 people that are coming to this area. We firmly believe that St Kilda as a suburb can benefit more from what it has been. In the past, people traditionally go to other areas, Albert Park, Middle Park, also other councils. They go to Stonington, they go to City of Melbourne. We believe that people want to come to St Kilda, and we want to give them a reason to come to St Kilda. And when they do, they will come to us along Fitzroy Street. They will come to us along Ackland Street, and they will spend money in those shops and those bars and those restaurants. And they will contribute to the vibrancy that has made St Kilda the suburb that so many people want to move into. So let's talk about the activation that this petition is all about. It's an activation, as it says in the letter here. It will be in Pollington Street along the side of the Esplanade Hotel. It will contain a 15 or 12 metre by 20 marquee. The marquee will have tables, chairs, there'll be a big screen, kids' activities, Formula One activities, and the Grand Prix races broadcast on a big screen. After that, there will be DJs playing, and it's not a pop-up nightclub. It's DJs providing background music for people to sit and enjoy their food and drink in the marquee as the sun goes down. It will be closed by 10 o'clock. The street will be empty of people by 10 o'clock. They will have been directed inside, or they will have been sent to other areas of St Kilda. I just want to make sure that any opinions are based on fact and not conjecture and hearsay, and possibly even pre-existing prejudices against the SB. I'm here to answer any questions anyone's got, starting now.
Thank you. Because we have Richie here, is anybody who among councillors have a question? No, you're off the hook. Thank you, Richie.
Over there. Sorry.
All right. I call upon David Blakely, also speaking to this petition for the Esplanade Hotel Grand Prix Party. Hello, David.
Hi, Heather. David Blakely. I'm talking on behalf, or as the President of Fishermans Street Business Association. We object to the small sample of people who are objecting to the activation. But this matter goes beyond just the SB tonight, which is our most iconic venue and long-lasting venue in the area, which employs over 300 people over the summer months, which is only second to the council, 382. I'm a member, a founding member of a bag group. There'd be a loss of face to the bag group if we were to succumb to this objection to the activation. Part of bag group, we have tried to engage with council successfully with the Grand Prix Corporation to drive benefit to local businesses and local areas. You know, if we take the same path as today, trades events could be affected in the future. Maybe our Halloween event might offend a group of people, or our Blues Fest. So this could have ramifications going on forward. And at the same time, what sort of message are we sending to the Grand Prix corporations as we try to reach out to them in the state government to activate? While, as noted in the Age last week, the Grand Prix Corporation mentioned about doing a major activation of Victoria Street, which would be amazing for our traders. The second thing I worry about, this is underlines process. We are benefits of $67 million worth of activations in our city of Port Phillip. Probably the majority of it in St Kilda. My traders, half my traders would not survive without those activations. We trust the processes and the staff, which I think do an incredible job. And I've been doing this for a while now, so I have seen vast improvements how economic development and the events team work. And I think it's I'll finish it up. I think the SB is a very compliant business, and we need to support people who've been innovative and leading. And just for Richie's note, to bring in music and Grand Prix a couple of years ago, I saw Bob Geldof lined
David,
up.
I'm going to have to stop you there, but thank you very much. I'm sorry. Say it on the microphone, they won't want to hear. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I cut you off the good part. I'm really sorry. I call upon Cassie Johnstone speaking to item 10.1, Inkerman Safety Improvement Project Engagement Findings. Hi, Cassie.
Hi.
Name, suburb, you have 2 minutes.
Cassie Johnston, St Kilda East. I would like to speak to agenda item 10.1 tonight, Inkerman Street Safety Improvement Project Engagement Findings, and ask a question about the project. It's unsurprising the majority of respondents who live on Inkerman Street and the suburbs the project is located in showed a clear preference for less impact to access and amenity for residents and traders. What I'm interested in knowing more about, however, is the continued emphasis on the high number of crashes attributed to Inkerman Street. Council's crash statistics for the stretch show that 9 out of 10 of the pedestrian crashes occurred at intersections, and 8 out of 10 of the cycling crashes also occurred at intersections. With the vast majority of crashes in both categories occurring at intersections, Hotham Street, Westbury Street, Chapel Street and St Kilda Road are the main culprits. My question tonight is why these accidents at major intersections are all attributed to Inkerman Street. It seems to me these cross arterials are actually the offenders in many instances. Just one example is this cyclist who turned right in front of a tram from a red light stop on Chapel Street. Council's Safe System Assessment Report prepared by consulting firm SMEC shows that option B confers exactly the same safety improvements as option A for intersections. At the same time, SMEC also confirmed that option B confers greater safety improvements than option A for pedestrians, who are the most vulnerable road users, as confirmed by Council's crash stats. I'm urging councillors to probe the statistics, facts and practical realities regarding this project more rigorously, and to listen to the majority of residents and businesses in the affected area who have now made their views clear.
Thank you very much. Just a few seconds ago. Thank you. I'll call upon Anna Linders, speaking to item 10.1, Inkerman Safety Improvement Project as well. Hello, Anna.
Hi, Anna Linders, Balaclava. Good evening, councillors. I'd like to speak to agenda item 10.1 tonight, the Inkerman Safety Improvement Project Engagement Findings. I note the findings of the engagement report show a clear 57.8% preference for less amenity and parking loss among respondents who live on Inkerman Street and the surrounding streets. This figure is even higher at 78.6% for businesses on Inkerman Street. And for suburbs the project is wholly within, we again saw a resounding 57% preference for less parking loss and less detriment to access and amenity for our community. However, I particularly want to address section 5.8 of the engagement report tonight, namely removal of mandatory requirement in survey. As shown in table 18, there were significant changes in the results after the removal of the mandatory question requirement, which saw votes for neither option jumping from 1.1% to 8.6%. What this clearly proves is that if neither option had been a clear-cut and properly advertised choice from the outset, results in this category would have almost certainly been far higher. I am personally aware of participants who, when faced with the original compulsory choice between option 8 or B, decided not to complete the survey at that point. In light of this, and the statistically significant rise in numbers after the change, how can Council be confident it has genuinely provided community members who would prefer neither option to have their voices heard?
Thank you. I call upon Louisa Larkin, speaking to item 10.2, this draft dog off-leash guideline for public consultation. Hello, Louisa.
Hello. So I'm Louisa Larkin and I'm from Port Melbourne. I want to thank Council, firstly, for starting the process of creating draft dog off-leash guidelines. However, I am concerned that the draft guidelines, before they have even been released for community feedback, this is the second round of community feedback, the minutes for this item tonight seems to state that there is an intention to make 3 sports fields, at least 1 other park, and possibly a section of beach prohibited to dog owners at all times. I ask Council to consider this question, and I'm not asking for an answer now, but just if you would mind considering this question. If you choose to ban dogs from parks and beaches, where will all those dog owners go to walk those dogs? I can tell you what will happen. Other parks will become overwhelmed with dogs, and this will lead to conflict. Council can't simply take dog parks away from the community and expect everything to be all right. Council will then need to urgently locate and build new dog parks, and this involves considerable cost. It also takes time. We urge Council not to alter the status quo in dog parks until the new dog parks have been built and are open to the public, if this is what you want to do. And I'd like to just pose a suggestion. Any action relating to dog parks should really not be taken until your data on registered dogs is up to date. From talking to people in dog parks, I think it's very likely that there are more than double the number that we believe, which is 8,000.
Thank you,
I think
Louisa.
it's more likely 16,000.
Thank you. I'll need to stop you there out of fairness.
No
for everybody,
worries.
but
Thank you very much for listening to me.
Pleasure. Thank you for coming in. I now call upon Alex Macon, also speaking to 10.2, the draft dog off-leash guidelines.
Moment I've been waiting for.
Hello, Alex.
Alex Macon, Port Melbourne. Speaking tonight on item 10.2, exploring Council's draft guidelines for the dog off-leash guidelines. I've emailed proposed motions to each of you as councillors and the Mayor, and I thank many of you for your responses to that suggestion on email. I'd like to speak to the intent that I'm trying to convey through those 2 items. I note under Council's community engagement policy that one of the principles is to build community and stakeholder confidence and trust in Council. There's always a perception when you go through a process that a conclusion is already foregone. So I suggest that the wording in the agenda tonight is of utmost importance. Where Council says this is what we will be undertaking, it is important to identify that this is a potential direction based on the feedback that is received once those draft guidelines are finalised. Similarly, there are a number of submissions here this evening that speak to those draft guidelines and obviously clearly have an intent of being submissions to those guidelines. I suggest that in building that confidence and trust, that incorporating the submissions here this evening will help ensure that community views regardless of what those views are heard as part of that process. We want to ensure that through this process, we once again are building trust in the community, trust in the process. Let's ensure that that feedback is captured in the various mechanisms in which it takes place. Thank you very much, and look forward to the item being deliberated.
Thank you, Alex. All right, I call upon Kathleen Murphy, also speaking to 10.2, the draft dog off-leash guidelines. Just give you guys a heads up, I have about 6 more after Kathleen, so we might take a break after that.
Kathleen Murphy.
Hello, Kathleen.
Kathleen Murphy, Port Melbourne.
Thank you.
Further to the last two, wanting to talk to the dog off-leash guidelines draft. A couple of comments I want to make regarding that. The second principle is around safety, and you say that people have a right to be safe. So too do dogs. And a lot of these off-leash parks aren't safe for dogs. And what we're seeing at the moment with the actions of the council before these draft guidelines have been adopted by putting forward to have these permanent spaces where dogs can no longer go is putting too much pressure on what's currently there. The current works that are being done to Lagoon Oval, which was a very large open space for dogs to be able to exercise sufficiently, that's now been closed to us, and it's putting too much pressure now on Gasworks Park. So going to safety at certain times of the day now, Gasworks Park is not a safe place for dogs or people because there's no other place to go and there's too many dogs now in that space. So talking to Principle 3, which is a diverse range of experiences for dogs, of having both fenced areas as well as a number of off-leash zones. The key with the off-leash areas is they need to be of sufficient size for dogs to be able to exercise freely without being put too much pressure on the number of dogs in a space. The only 2 fenced areas in the whole of the council in the city of Port Phillip, using the example of the one in Easton, is a very, very small fenced area. It's not sufficient for any dogs of size to get enough exercise. So in putting these principles together, absolutely commendable that you're putting it together, but they need to be seen as a positive and something that's going to be able to support the nearly 50% of the population that's got dogs in the area.
Thank you, Kathleen. Okay, I call upon Rodney Hardy, speaking to item 14.1, the notice of motion by Councillor Clark for a rates freeze. Hello, Rodney.
Yes, good evening. Rodney Hardy, Middle Park.
Thank you.
I feel today that I'm representing the silent majority, the people that aren't members of political parties or get involved unless they have to. We are well aware there is a serious financial upheaval which will possibly continue in the future. Singles, families, elderly and renters are also affected, and they are taking a hit adjusting expenditure and budgets. Council and organisations who apply for grants and or subscriptions from local government must also take a hit and wait for things to improve. Within an election year, it is common for those seeking re-election to promote themselves by listing what they have achieved, improvements made, a vision for the future. In the majority of cases, it involves expenditure. I urge you to consider this. Pass Councillor Clark's motion unanimously and in its entirety to show us you are financially responsible. You are aware of the impact the cost of living crisis is having on your constituents, and that you are united in your resolve to do your bit to ease the burden. What looks better in October? Rate rises and expenditure, or having the strength to take a hit and wait till things improve? I certainly applaud the association that left a pamphlet in my letterbox letting me know how you vote and how you conduct yourselves, because I have a right to know that. So I applaud that resident ratepayer organisation.
Thank you. Thank you. I call upon Campbell Spence, speaking to item 14.1, the notice of motion as well.
Campbell Spence, Middle Park. I ask councillors to support Rhonda Clark's motion, her cost of living crisis motion for a rate freeze to provide financial relief for all residents in this ongoing cost of living crisis. I thank those councillors who voted for the rates relief last year. You should be proud that Port Phillip was the only council that didn't pass on the full rates rise last year. Our community is continuing to experience financial hardship due to interest rates and inflation. The cost of living crisis is hurting families, single people, renters, ratepayers and business owners. Where can councillors find the $3.6 million of cost savings? A good place to start would be to benchmark Port Phillip against our neighbouring councils. For example, Port Phillip spends over $100 million more than Bayside, about $49 million more than Stonington, and the same for Glen Ira. This spending can't be justified on the basis of population, size, length of roads, type of assets. So my questions are, why does Port Phillip spend more than $10 million on arts, culture, festivals, when Bayside and Glen Ira spend less than $2 million on those same items? Glen Ira spends $5 million on those items. Why does Port Phillip spend $4 million on affordable housing and homeless services when those are the responsibility of the Victorian government? And our neighbouring councils do not provide those services. Why does Port Phillip spend more on salaries and have more employee numbers than our neighbouring LGAs? Why does Port Phillip allocate scarce resources on writing policies and reports that nobody reads? Please vote for Rhonda's motion. Now is the time for councillors.
Thank you, Campbell. I'll have to stop you there.
Thank you
very much. I now call upon Rhonda Small, speaking to item 14.1 as well. Hello, Rhonda.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. Rhonda Small, St Kilda. Rates the taxes property owners pay so councils can fund local infrastructure and services for all citizens. This is one of the ways we collectively provide for each other so that everyone can thrive in our community. We elect councillors to make decisions about how our rates will be spent efficiently on our behalf for maximum community benefit now and, importantly, also on behalf of future generations. Increases in rates have been severely restricted by rate capping since 2016, with the rate cap often set below the level of inflation. This has meant that Council has for some time been engaged in significant efficiency measures to meet this challenge, around $6 million since 2021-22. For the current financial year, with the rate cap set at 3.5%, well below CPI of 4.5%, Council decided to reduce the rate increase to just 2.8%, the only one, as someone just said, of Victoria's 79 councils to do so, reducing our municipal revenue by around $11 million over the coming decade. All this did was give a tiny annual saving ranging from $12 for those with property worth $1 million to $120 for those with property worth $10 million. Nothing, of course, was given to the 50% of people who rent in Port Phillip. Collectively, we all lost out at a time when Council faces major challenges from increased costs associated with urban renewal in Fishermans Bend, threats of sea level rise and urban heat and much ageing infrastructure. So it is now galling, I think, to see a motion come before Council calling for a rate freeze in 24-25, purportedly on cost of living grounds, and with the even more suspect motivation that rate increases that won't even cover CPI are somehow fuelling rising rents and freezing rates would benefit renters. Just as galling is the proposal that the CEO can magic a further $3.6 million of efficiencies without impacting the quality or availability of our services. And the councillor bringing the motion does not even identify where such efficiencies would come from. Please ask the CEO before you vote if council services would be affected by this motion.
Thank you, Rhonda. I now come on Justin Halliday, speaking to item 14.1 as well. Hi, Justin.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, officers. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Justin Halliday. I live in St Kilda East. I'm here speaking on this motion 14.1. This is basically fiscal vandalism, and it is a disgrace. Rates already over the last few years are running 30% below inflation. This is magical thinking that you can further cut our rates over time and that this will not affect the quality and availability of services delivered by this council. And let's be clear, none of this is going to help the people who are most feeling the cost of living pressures at the moment. This rates freeze is going to go straight into the pockets of big investors in property and people who are the most well-off in our community, and none of this is going to flow through to the renters and the people who are struggling on the streets every day. And if you're serious about actually tackling cost of living, you would increase the rates relief and you would implement rent relief as well for people instead of trying to strangle council services. This is a poison pill for the next council who you think is going to come in, and this is going to strangle their ability to deliver services, all of the infrastructure that other councils are begging for, all of these dog parks, all of these things that we hear about every day. You know, the idea that we should be exactly the same as every other council here is galling, to say the least. That is a statement. Thank you very much, councillors.
Thank you. I call upon Betty J to speak to item 14.1. Hello, Betty.
Good week. I have turned my talk into a dog's breakfast.
Good luck. Name and suburb, you got 2 minutes.
Betty J, South Melbourne. I'm here to speak to Councillor Clark's motion 14.1. I'm all for the rate freeze. I own my own business. I essentially sell clothes and shoes to independent retailers. I've done this for 20 years. What we strive to as retailers and wholesalers is offer the right products, the right service at the right price for the community. If we don't do that, we simply don't survive. My retailers and myself are preparing for hard times. Anyone that doesn't think we're about to enter an era of chaos is going to be in a lot of shock when it hits you. We understand cycles, not just of fashion, but cycles of economy, financial impact, and certainly international instability. We feel what's happening on the horizon. And what we are doing is we are tightening our belts, we are adjusting our products to fit the new marketplace, and we are increasing our customer service. We're essentially spending less and offering more. That's essentially what happens outside of these doors in independent businesses. It's been a real challenge for me coming to council over the last few years as a sole trader and someone that runs their own business with independent retailers, and just to see such different rules and different ways of getting income. Like, I've looked at your report for 2023. Essentially, you guys are just planning on increasing all your spending, all the rates for the next 10 years. The rates go from something like 140 million to nearly 200 million. I mean, I don't understand where anyone thinks that 30-40% is going to come from. Are we going to build 40% more? Or are we just going to charge everyone 40% more? And to think, I have been both a renter and a ratepayer, to think that ratepayers don't pass on their expenses is the most gullible and naive thing that I've heard all day. On behalf of the wider community, I'm here to say that we want rent relief. We want Rhonda's motion supported. I know you've looked in the past. I want you to look harder for more efficiency.
Betty, I'll need to stop you there for everyone else. Fair go. Thank you.
Like a game show. Yes to more dog parks.
I now call upon Jack Halliday to speak to item 14.1. I know this is the last on my list and of the blue forms. Is there anybody else here tonight that has registered to speak that we've missed? Nope. All right, Jack. Bring us in.
Jack Halliday from Balaclava. Madam Mayor, councillors and officers.
This motion seems both irresponsible and disingenuous. Irresponsible because it's intended to preempt budget outcomes, despite the Local Government Act requiring that all budget action should be made following full public consultation. And irresponsible in that the issue of which services would be cut, which is the proper responsibility of the councillors, has been referred to the CEO. And disingenuous because, as all councillors are aware, there are many areas of council responsibility where there are simply no funds available. In the area where I live, local groups seeking increased tree plantings in locations like Maryville Street and Argyle Street have been told by both councillors and officers that they are sympathetic to their situations, but there are no funds available. Similar responses have been given to residents who welcomed the new expanded open space in Packington Street and sought modest landscaping improvements. And the same response was given recently in relation to small amenity improvements at St Kilda Library, which itself is in need of urgent upgrading, as recognised by Council in budget projections until quite recently. Council's decision last year to not take up the full rate cap will cost it over $11 million in lost revenue over the next decade. And the effect of this present motion would lead to a compounded revenue loss of around at least $45 million over the same period, more than Council paid recently for the acquisition of the post office site for Fishermans Bend. And the list of future demands for services and facilities in Fishermans Bend will continue to grow year by year. Finally, there seems to be a striking imbalance in Council's budgeting processes between substantial capital projects, which absorb most of Council's discretionary funding each year, and balancing these expenditures against the more mundane and small-scale projects like street trees, open space and libraries, which impact the amenity enjoyment and the everyday lives of so many residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. All right. Thank you all. We have come to the end of the public question time and submissions. I think we should take a break because we've been going about an hour and a half. So let's come back. It's 7:54 on my clock, so let's come back at 8. I know it's a short one, but we've got a long night still ahead of us. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to councillor question time. Now, councillors, do you have any questions that you would like to raise there now that are of general nature, not about any of the items on the agenda tonight? Nope. All right, moving on. On to sealing schedule. Councillors, we have no items for sealing on tonight's agenda. On to petitions. Councillors, we have 2 petitions on tonight's agenda. We'll start with 7.1. This is the request extension of Elwood Beach Dog off-lead access. Do councillors have any questions of the officers in relation to this report item? No questions? All right. Sorry, Councillor Nyagui.
I was just wondering if officers could advise whether, as part of, I guess, the report for this petition, there'd be any consultation, and whether that consultation might be done in parallel with the off-leash dog guidelines, just to sort of, save on time and money.
Thank you. Who am I referring to?
Through you, Mayor. Dana Pritchard.
Thank you, Dana.
Through you, Mayor. We'll be looking into this request. We're currently doing work on dog off-leash areas right across the municipality, and we'll consider that alongside the guideline. We're out to engagement with the current dog off-leash guidelines, but any other changes, we can include this at a later date if that's the requests of councillors at that time.
Thank you, Dana. Any further questions? If not, I'm looking for someone to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor Crawford, thank you. Or something else. I assume you're moving the officer's recommendation. Who would like to second it? Councillor Martin. I need a new pen. All right, Councillor Crawford.
I won't say much, but thank you to the petitioners for bringing this today. Obviously, finding a way to allow dog owners and their dogs to have access to our spaces that makes sense is important, and I agree with that imaginary line. So, yeah, thank you for the petition. I look forward to the officer's response.
Councillor Martin.
Very briefly again, thank you to the petitioners. I can't comment on what happens at Elwood Beach in the morning. I'm normally there at sunset, so I'll have to wait and see what the officers say. Fantastic that the petitions come through at the same time. We're looking at the dog off-leash guidelines, so these can be considered at the same time. And the last but not least, a personal gripe of mine, our signage. Thank you for putting the signage in the petition. I look forward to our officers helping us address that.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? If not, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, on to 7.2. This is the Esplanade Hotel Grand Prix Street Party 2022. Oh, sorry, the 22nd to the 24th, so this week. Councillors, I note that this petition was provided to Council outside the required deadline. It was not included in the main agenda. The CEO assessed the petition alongside governance advice and agreed to accept it under Rule 53.8 of the governance rules due to the timeliness of the petition request. In accordance with Rule 19 of the governance rules, the CEO has requested, and I have agreed, to add this petition to tonight's agenda. So do councillors have any questions of the officers in relation to this item? Councillor Bond?
I'd first like to declare an interest.
Sorry, didn't give you that opportunity. Thank you.
I, Councillor Andrew Bond, have an interest, but not a conflict of interest in item 7.2, Petition Esplanade Hotel Grand Prix Street Party, in that I reside in the SB Apartments, which is where the petition has originated from. However, I don't have a conflict of interest as I derive no financial benefit from the SB's GP Street Party proposal. I don't believe there is any amenity impact on me or my apartments resulting from the SBGP Street Party proposal, and I haven't had any discussions about this event or petition with anyone who resides in my building.
Thank you. All right, back to questions. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Bond.
Yeah, questions for officers. Are AVC, the Australian Venue Code, the owners of the Middle Park Hotel, the Esplanade Hotel and many other businesses in Port Phillip, treated any differently by council or council officers to any other hospitality businesses in Port Phillip we deal with on a daily or ad hoc basis?
I'll refer to Lauren Bilcower.
Through you, Mayor, no they are not. Both councils' outdoor dining and event programs are governed by endorsed policies and guidelines. These documents form the basis of how officers assess all permit applications, regardless of who is applying.
Thank you, Councillor Bond.
Next question. How many officer hours have been used to investigate complaints around AVC, Australian Venue Code venues, mainly the Middle Park Hotel and more recently the Esplanade Hotel, made by 2 or 3 residents over the past 2 or 3 years? And how many of these investigations have resulted in breaches being identified?
Lauren.
Through you, Mayor, I can't quantify the exact number of officer hours taken. However, I can confirm that they far exceed the hours spent investigating complaints regarding any other venues. Despite the large number of investigations prompted by the same group of residents, we believe only one breach has been identified over a 3-year period, which involved a New Year's Eve event at the Middle Park Hotel involving amplified music. Whenever community concerns are raised with AVC by officers, they are addressed promptly and effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
What would be the cost to council tonight of councillors making a decision to cancel the SB Grand Prix Street Party, which commences first thing, or the setup commences first thing tomorrow morning?
Through you, Mayor, we believe the cost to the SB of cancelling their permit the evening prior to the event would be in the vicinity of $80,000. As the SB have proceeded in good faith, having received the required permit for the event, it would be reasonable for them to seek compensation from council for these costs.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Given that this is under delegation and appropriate meeting all our policy rules, why are we, I know there was a decision to bring it, but why do we feel like this is something that needs to be heard any more than any other application, given there is always nervousness around new events, and we understand that and we do try to monitor that, but why is this being treated any differently?
I'll go CEO.
I don't know if anyone, the CEO, is able to answer that, because I'm concerned it's setting a ridiculous precedent.
Through you, Mayor, I understand the question. I contemplated it. I had a lot going on last week. It came in on Thursday. I became aware of it on Friday. I only really had a chance to contemplate it on the weekend. I did get some advice around whether there's any other precedents around where we had accepted late petitions. So you've got to remember here, even though this may be under delegation, if the petition had been on time, it would have been accepted. So I had to consider that. There are some precedents. There's a few. There's not many. I'm aware that there's perception in the community around close relationship of council with AVC, and therefore in the interest of transparency and some precedent, I thought it appropriate to bring it to the chamber so you could hear it. Noting my concern again, like you, around setting a precedent for these late petitions being heard, but there was also a timing implication here in terms of if it was going to be heard, it had to be heard before the weekend.
Thank you. Councillor Montague, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to confirm, so these event permits have been handed out as part of the Events Strategy 2023-2026 and the Outdoor Events Policy 2023-2026. So my understanding is that these policies themselves went out to community consultation, I assume in 2022 or 2023, and that's the kind of the basis of the community consultation component, and then we don't ordinarily have a consultation on individual events once the policies themselves have been set.
Is that a question? Is that all
That's
accurate?
a question to officers to clarify
Is
that.
that correct?
Through you, Mayor, that is correct. The reason for that is we permit up to 400 events every year, and so it is not possible to individually consult on 400 events. The other reason would be that some of the tenets of the event strategy endorsed by Council are sometimes slightly in conflict with what resident desires may be, such as the objectives of bringing increased visitation and tourism to our vicinity.
Thank you. Further question?
My other question was just, I think before we were saying that we hadn't that ultimately this was a decision of the Esplanade Hotel to put forward this proposal. Did the endorsement of the Grand Prix by Council last year and the want and desire for us to, support business activation outside of the Grand Prix site, particularly in places like St Kilda, have any bearing on this process in terms of Council?
Through you, Mayor, the event would have likely been permitted under the remit of the event strategy without the resolution last year. However, officers did have a resolution encouraging them to pursue opportunities to provide economic impact as a basis of the Grand Prix. So those two things hand in hand made a compelling case for when assessing the permit.
Thank you. Any further questions on this item? Otherwise, I'm looking for someone to move this or something else. Councillor Bond, would you move this? Yes, Councillor Bond. And second it, Councillor Crawford. All right. Councillor Bond, you may speak to it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the officer's decision to grant the 3-day event permit for the Grand Prix Street Party in Pollington Street beside the Esplanade Hotel. The decision to grant the permit was made under delegation from Council based on many Council policies and decisions of this Council, such as our events policy, our business parklet policy, for example, as well as feedback from councillors. The City of Port Phillip has a business advisory group who strongly urged Council to explore greater cooperation with the Australian Grand Prix Corporation around leveraging opportunities for more local events in our municipalities. Our officers have taken on board this advice and request from the Business Advisory Group by permitting a number of events across our city that are Grand Prix related in the coming week. Other Grand Prix related activations over Grand Prix week, in addition to the Red Bull SB Street Party, include but are not limited to the 1-day event permit for the Portion Coffee event in conjunction with the South Melbourne Business Association, a 1-day event permit for the 7-Eleven Red Bull racing GP promotion on St Kilda Road, a 4-day event permit for the Fitzroy Street Business Association for 8 bands for Fitzroy Street across the 4 days, 1-day activation for a Ford racing event at Encore in St Kilda, 4-day event permit for the Middle Park Hotel Grand Prix activation in Armstrong Street, 4-day event permit for Jack the Geezer in Armstrong Street, a 4-day activation for Ned's Middle Park on Armstrong Street, a 4-day activation for the Albert Park Hotel Parklet, a 4-day event permit for the Golden Gate Hotel in South Melbourne, just to name a few. In short, we are listening to our businesses and responding to their needs and concerns. It was also heartening to read last week's comments from the new Australian Grand Prix Corporation CEO Travis Old, that he would like to explore more opportunities to activate the area surrounding the Grand Prix track, such as a Fitzroy Street Party, his suggestion, and I look forward to pursuing this opportunity and others with the Australian Grand Prix Corporation in the coming 12 months before next year's event. Separately, there is a cost and reputational damage to Council that we would occur if we were to start issuing permits and then cancelling them with as little as 12 hours notice, as would be the case if we cancelled this permit tonight. Therefore, I cannot support the request to cancel this permit from residents and will be voting to support the officer's recommendation tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
I'll just quickly say that our officers work very hard with all of people that apply for permits to address amenity and sound, and we have found that often the events run really well, like the basketball event in the peanut farm recently, and there is concern from residents ahead of these events that it is going to really disrupt them, and there will be obviously a little bit of inconvenience, but often we find they are very well run. In the case of a new event, let's see how it goes with the parameters in place, and if there are things and for future events, then we can look at tweaking them. But to knock something off, especially at this late stage, I would prefer, because of the unfortunate comments made, almost defamatory comments made last week, that this had to be brought to us as an exception. So I would encourage, I'm supporting the officer's recommendation, and I hope the event goes really well, and if there are tweaks to be made, well, let us make them for the future events.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to it? Councillor Martin.
Echo everything that the mover and seconder said. I note that the motion does include a formal debrief at the end of the event, so if there were any issues, and we certainly hope that there won't be, but if there were any issues, they can be picked up, and if necessary, the event could be modified in future years. So great that we're going to go through with it, and great that we're going to review it.
All right. Does anybody else want to speak to it? Councillor Nyagwi.
Yeah, I got to say, I find it difficult when we're petitioning against things that haven't happened yet. I think it's really important that we, reflect on the processes that we make decisions under. I've had a lot of residents over the time I've been on council complain about the way that we do consultation on different issues, and I think it's really important that we do at times reflect upon the process. That was one of the first things I did when I got notified about this petition. The first question I asked officers was, does this line up with our policy? And the answer was yes. And I think then we have to ask ourselves, did we have a proper consultation on the policy? And the answer was again, yes. I think that's the most appropriate avenue. As I think officers have said, I think it's really important that we reflect that we have lots and lots of event permits handed out all the time. Same thing with parklets, same thing with lots of different types of permitting from council. And we don't run a community consultation law, and that's simply not possible nor fair on the individuals involved. I think the way we do these processes is important, and the way we do them is by setting a policy and then acting all the permits under that policy, and that's an appropriate way of doing it and a fair way of doing it. I think to even consider cancelling this event 12 hours before is unfair. I think if there are amenity issues or issues in the way that we've used this policy, I think those are things that once the event has occurred we can reflect upon, and if there's ways that we need to change the policy, I'm always open to that, and I think all councillors are, I hope. But I think to try to suggest that we cancel it ahead of time or that we depart from the existing policy frameworks that our businesses are engaging us under is a bit unfair. And I am also concerned, I will say, with the consistent targeting by some members in the community about Australian Venue Company. I was appalled by some of the commentary made by some of the local community groups on this particular issue and was pretty offended by some of the statements made. And I think it's really important that we reflect on the fact that our council takes these kind of matters really seriously. We take matters around probity, around conflicts of interest, around corruption really seriously. We have clear policies, and any suggestion that we don't, that we are in any kind of inappropriate financial relationship with Australian Venue Company is deeply troubling, because I certainly think that is not the case. And I hope this event ultimately goes well. And I say to the residents, if we are amenity issues, we will reflect upon that. And if there's things we need to do in the policy or the permitting, we are all ears. We are always trying to find a way to activate and enable all the wonderful events and activations that occur across our city in a way that doesn't impact people as well.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to this? Otherwise, we can go to the vote. You want to close? Councillor Bond.
I'd just like to close by commending Australian Venue Company for people may not realise what they do in and around the Espy. Every Friday, Saturday, Sunday night on busy nights, they have their bouncers and staff go around the surrounding streets of the block, Victoria Street, Bollington Street, picking up all the rubbish that gets left in the street. I think it's every hour and a half they'll do a lap of the street. On Saturday night, I witnessed they had their security staff going around telling people in the surrounding streets people duck into surrounding streets to urinate all the time. We've all done it. We were all young once.
Keep going.
Every one of us has been in that position where we've been caught short. Their security staff were doing laps of the block, telling people, "Hey, there's toilets over there. Can you go and use them? Can you please stop? Urinating in the streets, things like that." And I don't know that many other venues in our city would actually do that, take the time to get their staff to do laps of the block, making sure that not just their venue and their immediate location of their venue is secure, but the entire block around Victoria and Bollington. So I just want to commend them for doing that. It is great to see a company take that sort of proactive action. They're not required to do that. There's nothing that says they need to do that, but it is just very good to see a company acting responsibly like that. I'd just like to commend them for that.
Thank you. All right, we're ready to go to the vote. All those in favour of the officer's recommendation? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, councillors, we'll now move to the presentation of reports. The first one we have tonight is 10.1. That's the Inkerman Safety Improvement Project. The engagement findings only. This is not a decision-making point. Councillors, are there any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question for the officers. We've heard some feedback around the consultation process and that people felt that there weren't enough options earlier on. My question is, in the first iteration of the Have Your Say online, was there any ability for people to give an opinion that wasn't one of the two options presented? Was there a free text option or the ability for people to email or anything like that?
Through you, Mayor, absolutely. There were plenty of options for participants to provide feedback that wasn't for option A or option B. So although those options were mandatory, there were open fields where people could elaborate on their point of view. Furthermore, when comments were made before the changes, before the mandatory change was taken off, where people have identified that there was preference for neither option, they were individually removed from the count of option A and option B and counted towards those that preferred that no changes be made to Inkerman Street. There were also the opportunities to email and pop-up events as well.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. And just to clarify then, everyone had the opportunity to write in and say they didn't want option A or B. They had the option to email. They had the option to say so at the pop-up events. And everyone who did so is recorded in this engagement as whatever option they were wanting. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, that is correct.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Just following on from Councillor Baxter's comments, if you didn't want to choose the options that were initially put there, then you made a separate comment. That wasn't calculated. That was then categorised in the report separately. So the people who wanted to say something different, when you just look at the two results, it's misleading because depending on what they said, it's not misleading, but it's
So point of order,
harder
Mayor. Is there a question that Councillor Clark is...
I'll ask to just continue to get to the question, please.
So when you took those comments, they're not in the two categories, so it's harder to then work out what they meant in terms of how you've reported on it.
Through you, Mayor, each individual response was analysed by both a consultant as well as council officers. And each of them were identified if they had selected option A or option B. They were identified through their open comments as not supporting either option and therefore removed from the tally for option A and option B and put in a different category altogether.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, if not, I'm looking for a councillor to move the officer's recommendation or something else. Councillor Baxter to move. Who would like to second this? Councillor Nyagri, thank you. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. So, I'd like to thank all of the community members who participated in this engagement. That's item 3.1 as part of the motion. This is actually one of the largest sort of consultation or engagement processes that I've seen on council. I'm not sure whether it is the largest, but it's definitely one of the big ones. Approximately 1,500 people participating in this, and I think that reflects some of the strong efforts by locals in the area to inform people about the plans or proposed plans for Inkerman Street. But I just wanted to acknowledge the really quite diverse feedback, I suppose, from the community. It's a hugely clear majority there of 86.7% of respondents wanting safe cycling infrastructure on Inkerman Street. So I find that to be quite striking. I know that a local activist group that claimed to represent the entire community said that no one wanted safe cycling infrastructure on Inkerman Street. And this really, given that there was such a big noise around this, there was people getting letterboxed and leafleted, there were posters all over the place, to have such a strong support for safe cycling infrastructure of one kind or another is really heartening to see. Our community is sick of the danger to cyclists and pedestrians. Our community really wants to redesign and reshape our streets for people rather than so much for cars. And obviously, streets can be shared between various different modes of transport. Obviously, people that will still need to drive, people will need to ride, people are increasingly using things like e-scooters, and of course people walk, use strollers and all of those sorts of things. Redesigning our streets so that they can all utilise them safely is obviously the goal here, and it is really, really heartening to see the community supporting that massively. I will point out the real big disparity between what the community members and the residents in the area want and what the businesses want. And I think that that's quite a stark difference there in terms of the business community wanting one thing and the actual residents who live there wanting another. But I do think it does tell us that it's good to have a good dialogue with the businesses in the area to try to make sure that, regardless of which option we go for, there are lots of things that we can do that can, assist them and meet their needs and perhaps calm down some of their fears about what might happen on the street in terms of their business. I understand, they are concerned. So that's definitely something to note. But just given the huge amount of participants in this is really, really good data here, and it just goes to show just how passionate people are about this. So I'm happy to move on to the next stage.
Thank you. Councillor Nyagri.
Yeah, I wanted to echo Councillor Baxter's remarks. I think this is, probably the first thing I thought when I read this survey was how fantastic it is to have this many people engage in the process. We often bemoan at times that people don't engage in our consultation processes and we don't hear from enough people when we're looking at doing a project. And I think we can definitely say in this case that we've heard a lot of really useful feedback that will enable us to deliver a good project on this street. There's definitely some mixed results in terms of what people want, and it's, I guess, the challenge then for the 9 councillors to work with officers to find a way to interpret and understand what we've heard from our community and find a way forward, and that's what we'll be doing in the next little while. But I just want to thank again the community for engaging in this process and providing us with feedback. And I encourage people to be patient as we sort of sift through this and in due course come back to you with a project.
Thank you. Any other councillors speaking to this item tonight? Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Mayor. I was also very impressed with the massive feedbacks. Nearly 1,600 responses came back to council, and there was a lot for the officers to literally go through one by one to really tease out those responses. When we did halfway through the process, made option of neither A or B available. So I'd like to thank the officers for doing that line by line work. Would have been quite intensive and not hard to work out, but line by line to work out. I'm also impressed by the fact that something of the 1,579 respondents, that nearly 78% actually came back from St Kilda, East Balaclava and St Kilda, so they're very passionate about their area and how their streets function, and also the responses all from the business owners, which was a very high input, so that we understand or try to get some grasp of how these, whether we go for option A or option B will affect them, and whether it impacts their businesses in a very severe way. So I'm really glad to see this massive and very, very passionate engagement by the community and that particular area, because this is where they live. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the item? Otherwise, I'll come back to Councillor Baxter if you'd like to close. You close? Okay.
Yep, thank you. So, I think that what this data is clearly telling us is that, like I said, the community who lives in this area, who are residents in this area, have a very, very clear message that they want us to do something to make Inkerman Street safer for all road users. So I guess what our decision to come back with here is not, should we do something? It's more, what do we do? What's the shape of what we do? What is going to give the most benefits? What is going to keep people the safest? And we can do that knowing that we've got the strong support of the community that we should put in those sorts of changes. So, very, very happy to see such massive engagement here, and I encourage people to read through the engagement report. There's lots of data there, but I will make one final note as well, that obviously when we do engagements like this, we're grateful for as many people who can participate as possible, but it's very rare that you get a perfectly representative sample of people, right? So we will note that people between the ages of 18 and 24, and between the ages of 25 and 34, and between the ages of 15 and 17, hugely underrepresented in this cohort, while people who are between the ages of 35 and 59 and 69 actually are massively overrepresented. So that will skew some of the results, I think, but it is still something that we can continue to work on with the community and try to make sure that everybody is engaging and understanding what we're going for. So that's it.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to 10.2. This is the draft dog off-leash guideline for public consultation. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? I do, but I'm going to have to find my paper. Here we go. Oh, Councillor Nyagri, you can go first.
I was asking officers on email before, so my core question, which I've been asking before, is just whether some of the documents that came through from the deliberation panel and some of the initial briefings are able to be shared publicly, and whether that would be part of the consultation or be separate.
Thank you. Dana, are you still online?
Through you, Mayor, yes, many of those papers that were shared with the deliberation panel are already online, and the ones which aren't, we will look at and share the ones which are appropriate to do so.
Great. I'll ask a question. Are there any projects currently underway regarding dog off-leash areas, and what are the timings of them, and how are they factored into the dog off-leash guidelines that are currently in draft? Have any yet to be finalised?
Through you, Mayor, the purpose of the report to Council tonight is to look at the dog off-leash guidelines to release for consultation. The guidelines will be used for decision-making post-adoption, so past the consultation and the updating of the guidelines. There are a few current projects which we are considering with regards to dog off-leash. They include the 2 petitions which have been held over the last few weeks, which was the Elwood School Reserve and the Elwood Foreshore, consideration of use of both Eastern Reserve and Lagoon Reserve, which we discussed tonight with many people, and also we're also looking as part of the guidelines reviewing all current and future options and opportunities for dog off-leash areas as well. So this will all be informed by the adoption of the guidelines, and we'll be bringing back any proposed changes as part of the implementation of the guidelines. Any changes to dog off-leash areas will go through community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. We have received a few emails from residents concerned that it looks, maybe their interpretation tonight, that there may be some decisions including in the agenda item. So sections 2.4 and 4.10 or 4.10 have been called out. Is there anything in the report that suggests a decision is being made right now?
Through you, Mayor, those items were put into the report post the first 2 rounds of engagement. They are open to engagement at the moment. That is the purpose of putting it out to the community. All engagement will be considered as part of this process, including the people who have spoken tonight at Council.
Thank you for clarifying. Any further questions? All right, would a councillor like to move this? Or something else? Councillor Pearl. Who would like to second? Councillor Bond. All right, Councillor Pearl, would you like to speak to it? All right, Councillor Bond.
No, just to confirm that these are draft guidelines that are going out to consultation as of Monday, and I encourage everyone in the community to give us their feedback on these guidelines over the next 5 weeks while we consult on them. There will also be another opportunity to come to a council meeting, I think it's in June or July, when we look to adopt the off-leash guidelines and make them official. So there's still plenty of opportunity for people to come and talk to us and give us their feedback.
All right, Councillor Nyagri.
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to engage in this process. I think my concern personally has been the way in which we have rather significantly departed from the feedback from the panel. I've been kind of not happy in my view, but ultimately it's a matter for councillors. But I feel that councillors who are probably leaning against dogs have significantly altered the intention of the panel, which is a concern for me. I think it's really important when we're trying to get these guidelines right that we do strike a right balance. It's not an easy thing. I speak that as somebody who's got a dog in my family, but also has had plenty of negative experiences over the years with dog owners and uncontrolled dogs. But the way in which I think we have taken some of the key principles, but I don't think we've actually taken on the intention of the panel. And if I reflect upon the wording that we're using within this document and compare it to the wording from the panel, and this is a panel of 50-50 dog owners and not, I think we've significantly moved away from our intention of providing quality dog off-lead areas for dog owners and balancing that with the rest of the community. I'm hopeful that we can provide some of that information to the community to assist them with their consideration of this, and I hope we can find a way to bring this policy back to a more balanced position.
Thank you. I'll add my part. I appreciate the people who spoke to us tonight, the people who have also emailed us. if this passes, we will open up that next round of engagement. We hope that you engage in that process. We've had some clarification through questions tonight about what is been decided, which is it's just come through those prior rounds, and here is the opportunity to have that feedback. We have invested a lot of time on this one, and it is still very important to keep going through the process, and we welcome the feedback because dogs bring a large range of views to some people who want less and many that want more, and we're trying to balance those needs as it increases both in both sides, with more dogs and with more residents. I remember a lot of this started because people wanted to see changes, for example, on our beaches. In order to do that equitably, we are doing a larger process to consider these guidelines first and foremost, and not just rushing to the item to come back to say, where's the right place? What's the right framework for this? And so appreciate everyone's patience in the process as we finish that out. Would anybody else like to speak to it? If not, Councillor Pearl, would you like to close? You're okay. All right. Well, then let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. All right. Thank you. Now, I'm going to just take a little personal moment because my sister has arrived today. Embarrassing her. But she's flown in from the US, and I know she's very jet-lagged. So if you don't mind, just give me 5 minutes to just say hello. And, yeah, thanks. Sorry to be disruptive since we took a break 40 minutes ago. But 8:45, we'll be back. Good? Thank you, everybody, for letting me have that little moment. You know, the City of Port Phillip meetings are real tourist attractions. We should charge entry, is what I'm being told. No. All are welcome. We should get penguins in here. We'll be part of the tourist attraction. Okay, so we're now on to 10.3. We have all councillors and ELT. Okay, let's go. This is Council's submission to the Victorian Government's Montague Precinct Implementation Plan for Fisherman's Bend. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to the item? No? Oh, is that a question or a hand up? CEO? No? Next one. Yeah? No questions? I'm looking for someone to move this or something else. Councillor Martin, would you like to move the officers' rec? Yeah? Councillor Sirikoff to second?
No, I've got a
question. No? You have a question. All right. You're kind of slowing us down, but go ahead.
Say what?
Quick.
So, quick question is, referring to attachment 2, figure 5, refers to a legend of protected cycling infrastructure. Can Council confirm if these bike lanes will also be considered with alternative treatments as already described in the Integrated Strategy Network points 18A and 18B that we voted on about a month ago?
Is that 10.3 or 10.4?
Is it the Montague Street one?
Yes. Is that correct?
Yep.
You're Montague? Okay, great.
Attachment
Just making sure.
5.
Pardon? Brian T., can you please respond for us?
Thank you. And yes, Councillor, while the notation talks about a protected, and that is the language that's used by the Transport Safety Report, which guided the development of the map and the location of those bike paths, the treatment, protected, painted or otherwise, will be determined as part of the detailed design process, and that will take into account the sorts of matters that the Council have indicated, which includes safety but also amenity, parking, and all those matters will be considered as part of that detailed design, which will then determine what the actual treatment looks like.
Thank you. All right. Any further questions? Otherwise, Councillor Martin's move it and I'll second it.
I'll make a few points if that's all right, Mayor. Right to go?
Yep, go please.
Firstly, I'm glad I'm still alive to see this finally come from our officers. No, just not because of our officers, but because for the last 4 or 5 years we've been waiting for a long time for the Montague Precinct Improvement Plan to finally appear, and it's finally got there, and I'm glad I'm still on council now that it's come through, and I thank the officers for their comments, and they've made some very, very salient points. There's lack of detail on the Montague Improvement Plan, so we need more detail in the document. There's no real discussion of where the funding's coming from and how we're going to be accessing developer contributions, and as many of you know, some of the Montague precinct and much of the Fisherman's Bend precinct is built on former swampland, and there's going to be an enormous amount of money required for infrastructure. And unless the developer contributions are accessible to us, unless there's a sufficient amount of them, this could be not just a sink for people to sink into as they sink into the mud, but it could be a sink for council money to sink in as well. So it's really important that the state government can assure us that there are going to be sufficient funds for infrastructure that doesn't need to come at council expense. Great to see our officers are recommending that we implement, that the state government implement the urban forest strategy to make sure that it's sufficiently green when the precinct's completed, that the parklands are reallocated so we can line up our parklands and almost have like some sort of bio corridor in the north of the precinct. They're advocating for more open space and, as I said, a better addressing of the flooding issue. Officers, thank you so much for making those points. Let's hope that the appropriate authorities take those on board so that the Montague area becomes a vibrant, effective and marvellous place to live at no additional cost to our council.
Thank you. I'll add this area is lucky to have a lot of public transportation already. The parts that the other aspects of Fisherman's Bend are wanting to see. So it has the opportunity to have development started, and it definitely has started. But what we're not seeing is the rest of the infrastructure. That it's good to have the plan, finally seeing a little bit more detail here, but that implementation, the residents are there now and they're coming, more of them quickly. This has to keep moving, and so I'm pleased that we put in this submission. Thank you to the officers. Would anybody else like to speak to the item? No? Would you like to close? No. Do you need to say anything else? Nope. All right, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, a fairly similar topic. 10.4, this is Council submission to the Victorian Government's Fisherman's Bend Urban Renewal Area Development Contributions Plan, Planning Scheme Amendment GC 224. Councillors, do you have any CEO would like to declare?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, declare a potential for perceived or material or general conflict of interest. As mentioned previously, I'm seeking further advice. I wasn't involved in the final report. I'm comfortable sitting here. I'm not a decision maker tonight, and it is information publicly available.
Thank you. All right, any questions of the officers in relation to this item? No, I'm looking for someone to move this or something else. Councillor Martin to move. Councillor Bond to second. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
I won't repeat my comments to the previous motion, but they're all relevant. And the biggest one is that there's no real explanation in the public documents that we've got at the council as to where all the funding's going to come for the infrastructure, except to references to developer contributions. And our officers have made the point very, very clearly that we as a council need to know where the money is coming from so we can provide advice as to how that infrastructure is built. And again, it shouldn't be at council expense. And again, I make the point, Fisherman's Bend is being built on a swamp. We need to make sure that our physical facilities don't sink into that swamp, and we need to make sure that the council money doesn't disappear into a swamp as well. The other point that's made in the officer's report is the public transport issue there. We've been arguing for a long time that we need appropriate tram lines, bus routes and so on. These have been talked about for a very long time. Thank you, officers, for again raising this. And again, let us hope that the appropriate authorities take note of the officers' report and the many excellent recommendations that appear in those reports are implemented in the Fisherman's Bend Development Program.
Thank you. Councillor Bond? No? Anybody else need to speak to this item or want to speak to the item? Councillor Crawford?
Just with this item, I guess I just wanted to emphasise to the community, like this is key to delivering on the vision that is Fisherman's Bend that we have been talking about for a very long time. And I guess this will make or break whether Fisherman's Bend lives up to its possibility. So I just want to urge the state government and for anyone contributing that council has a limited amount of money to contribute, but delivering this infrastructure is really important for future residents and the ones that are currently moving in there now. So, and particularly the catalytic infrastructure, which is the public transport. And I would just, put out to the community, please urge the state government to come to the party as much as they can and as soon as they can, and give us certainty around that.
Thank you. Any further submission or Councillor speaking? No. Councillor Martin, do you want to close? No. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, 10.5, the e-scooter trial update. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to this report? Questions? No? All right. We have an officer's recommendation. Would someone like to move this? Or something else? I'll move it. Councillor Baxter, would you like to second it? Okay. This is obviously a trial that keeps on getting extended, but we think there may be a chance that this trial will not be extended again, and that date's coming up quickly on about the 5th of April. We have seen a big uptake, huge success for the program. However, there's many concerns by residents and visitors about the safety, and we continue to urge the police to help enforce that, as well as the safety evaluation to be released. This tonight is just trying to get us to the permissions to extend the arrangements currently until we can go through a full procurement. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to it? No? All right. Any other councillors speaking to the item? No? If not, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, 13.1, this is a proposed update to rating strategy 2022 to 2025. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers in relation to the report? Councillor Baxter? Oh, you want to move? Any questions? Okay, goodness, we are going quick. Councillor Baxter to move. Councillor Pearl to second. Thank you. Councillor Baxter, are you speaking to it?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm really glad this is going out for consultation. I know that this is something that we've all been working on for a while. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Bond, who has, let's say, been bashing his head against a brick wall on this one for some time as well. It's probably, the headache's probably going to wear off at some point, but it's a really important tool for us to use to make sure that land, and particularly the unactivated retail land, is being used in a way that's really benefiting our community. And I think that we've put a lot of effort and a lot of money into incentives and ways that we can get people to activate their retail land, which is really great. I think it's really important to have a carrot in that respect, but a carrot is kind of worthless without a stick, and I feel like this is the missing piece of that puzzle that's going to really make sure that landowners, who for the most part are doing the right thing, but those who are letting their land go derelict or not activating their retail land or leaving it vacant, will be encouraged to not continue doing that. So I'm really excited to put this out for consultation along with our budget, and really hoping that we can move into that space, because I think we desperately need it.
Thank you, Councillor Pearl. No. Councillor Martin?
Those of us in the Gateway Ward area have been walking past some derelict land for a long time, a couple of the blocks for more than 10 years, and well before I was elected to council, people were saying to me, what is the council doing about this land? And thanks to the urgings of Councillor Bond and others, we're going to have a plan to encourage those people who are, I hate this, I'm not going to suggest they're land banking, that's far too strong, but have been a little slow in their attempts to develop that land. This is going to provide some significant incentive to them. And for those people who spoke earlier who are concerned about the rates that they're paying, there's an unforeseen consequence that they may well be pleased about, because I note that if, for example, Council went and adopted the 2.8% rate cap that the state government has put on councils, because there would be a significant increase in rates from some of the other areas, e.g. the derelict land, the unactivated retail land and the vacant land, the increase in rates on standalone housing would be significantly less than the 2.8%. I think officers have modelled it, and officers can correct, I think it's at about a 1.4 or 1.5%. So not the reason that we're putting this forward, but it will have a significant impact on the amount of rates that people in residential land are paying, a significant reduction on the increase that they would have had if we didn't introduce this. So an unexpected but perhaps welcome side benefit of this process.
Thank you. Councillor Nyabi.
Yeah, I really welcome this going out to consultation, and I'm very keen to hear what the community have to think, and I will definitely single out Councillor Bond, who's pushed this for a while. I think there's a really significant opportunity here to provide a financial incentive to some in our area who choose to leave their land vacant or to leave it derelict or unactivated for extended periods of time. It definitely has a significant impact on our community, and I think this is a really meaningful but reasonable way of us trying to balance that problem better. I look forward to hearing the feedback from the community as part of the budget process.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Bond, let's go to you.
I will speak to this, given I've been banging on about it for so long. In fact, I've been banging on about it for so long that I actually remember going back to getting a phone call pre-council days from Louise Crawford to discuss differential rates and what we could do before she was even on here. We had a bit of a conversation about how we can do it and how it works and why. At the time, it was why we couldn't do it. It was because of the rating system we had in place in the time didn't allow us to have differential rates in our municipality. It now does when we switched over last year from the old rating system to the new rating system. We can now have differential rates, which allows us to have categories such as this, where we will apply differential rates to derelict parcels of land that are just let sit empty in our municipality, unactivated retail sites, and we all know them, all up and down Fitzroy Street, Ackland Street, where they just sit empty for years, and you think, why don't they rent that building out? Why can't they just let it to cover costs? And they never do. Well, I can't explain why that happens. There's something happening that defies the laws of supply and demand, but it's out there. But what this means is that there will be an incentive built into the rating system for these people who have just let their land and their retail sites and vacant land and derelict buildings that are quite frankly a blight on our municipality, just sit empty, and we will now be doing something about it. And they will be paying. And as Councillor Martin alluded to, this isn't an increase in our rate take. It just means that these buildings will be paying a whole lot more, or these sites will be paying a whole lot more, and the rest of the municipality will be paying just a tiny, tiny little bit less, and the two amounts will offset each other. So it's not an increase in rates for our council. We're not going to have a windfall here. We're still going to take in the same rates as we would if we didn't have this. It just means they pay more, and everyone else pays a tiny, tiny little bit less until such time as the sites are activated, as they're not left derelict, as they're let out, and then they won't have to pay this anymore. And that's the stick that Councillor Baxter referred to in this process, that we hope this finally forces some of the people who have just left their buildings, shops, whatever, sit empty for years, do something about it, or else they continue to subsidise the rest of the city.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to the item? Is that a hand, Councillor Baxter? You want to close? All right, then, Councillor Baxter, would you like to close?
Yep, thank you. Just want to thank as well a lot of the residents and businesses that are close to our high streets who have reached out to us to implore us to do more about this. We do know that more and more vacancies on our high streets are obviously motivated by all sorts of macroeconomic reasons that we can't necessarily control, but there's obviously that incentive somehow for landowners to not let out their shops, and it results in all sorts of potential social issues and stuff like that. Streets become abandoned, they can attract antisocial activity and all sorts of things like that. This hopefully will be able to push in the other direction and provide the financial disincentive the other way, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of those other ancillary benefits as opposed to the ancillary disbenefits that we've been seeing on our high streets.
Thank you for closing. All right, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, now we're on to 13.2. This is a proposed discontinuance of road adjoining 197 to 190 and 199 Princess Street and 55 Station Street, Port Melbourne. Sorry. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this item? No. All right, I'll go ahead and move this one. Councillor Sarakoff to second. This one, I was approached several months ago about it. For years and years, they've been trying to do something on this site, but the ability to purchase it is out of their means. But they're still experiencing antisocial behaviours. So I really appreciate all the officers' time on this at the result of the petition or joint letterman to get to this level and keep going to find a good solution for them. Councillor Sarakoff?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I also recall when the family turned up to council, they were very distressed about the antisocial behaviour that was down this strip of land. And what they did say that they do maintain that bit of land, that strip, and but despite all trying to keep it clean and calling the police, the antisocial behaviour of people coming in to that area and causing them a lot of angst and a lot of stress about their security and safety. So I think this is a really good decision because the street's not, this strip of land is not used really for anything else. So I think this is a really good outcome for the safety and security of people who just want to live a happy life. And so I'm very supportive of this.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking to it? Councillor Baxter?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just note that this is simply about the discontinuance of the road and doesn't go into detail about what potential treatments might be occurring there. And certainly there's no sale as part of this motion, as there often is when we do a discontinuance of roads. So I guess my belief is that if we were to close this off and take this away as public land and essentially sort of privatise it for the benefit of private people, it should be through a sale process. But I have no issue with the discontinuing of the road because it's obviously not a road and that's fine. But I will be looking with interest as to what sort of potential treatments we'll be looking at going forward.
All right. Anybody else speaking to it? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Can you keep your hands up, please, because everyone's raised them at different times. That's carried unanimous. Thank you. All right, now to 13.3. This is the appointment of authorised officers pursuant to the Planning and Environment Act 1987. All right, so we don't have the officers listed on the screen, but they're in the attachments. There's 3. Any questions of the officers in relation to the report? No. All right. Who would like to move this? Councillor Martin, thank you. I'll second it. Councillor Martin, do you want to speak to it? No. I'll just add thank you to these new planners coming on board. We look forward to working with you. A very important role in our council. Anybody else speaking to it? Let's take it to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Thank you. On to 13.4. This is records of informal meetings of council. Any questions of the officers? Looking for someone to move it. Councillor Crawford, thank you. And to second it, Councillor Martin, thank you. Councillor Crawford to speak to it. Councillor Martin? Anyone else? Okay, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. All right, that's the end of the presentation of reports, but we're on to notice of motions, and we have one notice of motion tonight. The item is 14.1. It's a motion raised by Councillor Clark in relation to rates freeze. Councillor Clark, let's take the opportunity here to ask for any questions. So, Councillor Crawford, do you have a question?
I guess this is a question for the CEO. Given that we've had advice many, many times that this is not possible, is there, one, the capacity with officers, given the huge workload that we have, to even do this? But two, is it actually doable? Like, or reason? I mean, you know, because.
I'll see you.
Through you, Mayor. I understand the intention. I understand the concern in the community around value for money and affordability of rates and waste charges. Personally, take great responsibility each year in working through the budget with the councillors and the organisation to ensure that we are getting the best value we can. There's always room for improvement in the way that we do service delivery, and we don't always get things right. We are committed to ongoing efficiency savings and have been for a long period of time. Probably, I don't know there'd be too many organisations that would have the perpetual efficiency savings that we've probably had for the last 8 budgets. They're getting tougher to achieve, but we have been still committed to that. We've looked at other ways and levers of how we fund things. I think in the current environment, you know, we've done some really good things in terms of the acquisition of the Australia Post site. And while we had reserves put aside for that, we're obviously earning interest income, significant interest income on that, which will in the next couple of years decline. We did spend a fair bit of time over the years really optimising our children's services, for instance. We had a discussion with Councillor around what it wanted to do in children's services. It wanted to stay in. We did get that to closer towards break even. It took us a long period of time to get there. Unfortunately, with changes post-COVID, you know, there's real budget pressure this year in that space, and you know, I project it will cost us probably an extra $600,000 to $800,000 per annum for the next couple of years while we try and improve things further. But with demand and the cost of delivering these services going up by far more than the rates cap and CPI, that's difficult. We've got a range of other things that are just going up by more than the rates cap and by more than CPI. Capital expenditure outlook is around 6.5% on top of the historic kind of increases that we had in that kind of COVID period. So there's a lot of external pressures that drive the challenge for us. We have done fairly well, I think, to operate within the rates cap and last year below it, while not cutting into services too much. We did a deep dive cost review last year with councillors with varying levels of information and great depth of information. But ultimately, no, I don't think I can achieve a 3.6 million reduction in spending on top of the 1.8 million efficiency savings as an ongoing reduction in council operating budgets without compromising the quality or availability of services.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question around, I guess it's more of a governance question, but this motion completely circumvents our budget process directing the CEO to prepare the budget in a certain way. We have legal requirements under the Local Government Act about how we are to prepare and exhibit and consult on our budget. Is this motion legal?
Who would like to take that?
Well, through you, Mayor, look, at the end of the day, I didn't think it was illegal. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. I have to approve notices of motion when they come to the chamber. I mean, look, the way I would have considered this, the way I was considering it, would be that I'd try to prepare a draft budget or include a draft budget that would include some kind of savings line in it that would it'd still have to go through the normal. This would still need to go through the normal council consultation processes in terms of preparing the budget. So I hadn't considered it to be illegal. I hadn't really put that lens on it. I don't know if governance has a view, but I thought we could still consider it as part of how we were developing through the normal budget process.
All right, Head of Governance.
Through you, Mayor, under Rule 22.2 of the Governance Rules, CEO may reject any notice of motion which is vague or unclear in intention, beyond Council's power to pass, or if passed, result in Council otherwise acting invalidly. The notice of motion as far as governance is concerned, doesn't meet any of those thresholds. As the CEO stated, it will just require that process to go through.
Councillor Baxter, did you want to clarify your question?
Yeah. So, I appreciate the governance advice in whether or not the motion breaches our governance rules. I guess I just wanted to clarify whether or not we would be meeting our obligations under the Local Government Act. Can I clarify that we have not, that is, we don't have an opinion on that as yet?
Through you, Mayor, it would probably be ideal if it was more direct the CEO to prepare the draft budget for public consultation. But no, we haven't had advice on that.
One more question.
Yes, go ahead.
Would it be appropriate to seek legal advice on the legality of this motion before we proceed, what would happen if we were to pass this and then without legal advice to make sure that we can actually enforce it? What are some of the ramifications of that?
CEO?
Well, I'll seek some, through you, Mayor, some governance advice on it, but I think if after the fact it was determined not to be legal, we wouldn't implement it.
Like a rescinded message? All right, no, I guess not.
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, under the Local Government Act, the budget would still need to go through, draft budget would still need to go through community consultation regardless of the outcome of this notice of motion.
Okay, Councillor Nyagui?
So just to clarify then, you've answered the question about whether you think it'd be possible to actually practically implement this. Would it be practically possible for us to prepare this hypothetical draft budget in what I believe is under a month for public consultation, if that's the assumption that we're making about proceeding with this motion tonight? Noting that the consultation, I think itself, opens on the 18th of April and it's the 20th of March today.
Through you, Mayor, given it infers that it would happen without compromising quality or availability of services, I guess the way that I would prepare the draft budget would be to be clear that's the direction the council has set, and we've included a target, but there'd be significant risk or unlikely for that to be achieved in terms of the officer's advice, unless there was offsetting service reductions that the councillors had identified to go out with that public consultation.
Councillor, you both have spoken, so I'll go Councillor Baxter and Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. Just coming back to governance advice, given that the CEO has given his opinion that it's not possible to practically achieve what the motion literally says in words, what is the governance advice in terms of whether this is a valid notice of motion? I mean, if it can't practically be done, does that mean I could submit a motion that says directs the CEO to obtain a unicorn, in the next 12 months? I mean, if something can't actually be done, how can we accept it as a motion?
CEO?
Through you, Mayor, I think I've been asked for my honest opinion. I've given that. I think it's now up to councillors. I'd encourage you to debate the motion and make a decision.
Okay, Councillor Crawford and then Councillor Martin.
So can I just clarify? So we please, Peterloo, through you, Mayor, that last year we didn't take the full rates cap. So we already have lost approximately $11 million in the forward 10 years. So that's $11 million to fund everything that people want. We've already lost. If we were to, this motion was to get it adopted, then it would be about $60 million on top of the $11 million that we would be for future council in the next 10 years to provide. It would be like $71 million. Am I correct in my calculations?
I think it's off. Yep. Okay, there you go.
Through you, Mayor. The motion suggests 3.6 million of rates forgone. Approximately, based on projection, that would be about $42 million over 10 years. The previous 11 million has been factored in now forward estimates, so this is on top of that. Yep.
Councillor Martin.
Referring back to an earlier motion when we've agreed to put out for consultation the idea of differential rates on particular types of property, if that went through the consultation process and the community came back and accepted it, if that motion, if those recommendations were carried and there was a 2.8% and we accepted 2.8% rate cap, what would be the impact of these new differential rates on a standalone house, and the average standalone house in the city of Port Phillip, given that most of our properties are multiple unit dwellings? So, are we looking? What would be the percentage increase likely on the average standalone suburban home? Are we looking at about a 1.4, 1.5%, or in that area? Councillor Bond was saying it's not very much, and I don't think it is. But in terms of percentage terms, would it be looking at, instead of being a 2.8% rate increase, what percentage would the rate increase be for that typical standalone suburban home?
CFO.
Through you, Mayor. That's quite a difficult question to ask because valuations do move property during a year. Having said that, I do note that the a median house is around $1.8 million, $1.75 million. So we assume that would be around probably about 1.9%. Of course, that's subject to the various valuation movement during a year. That's our preliminary modelling at this stage.
I have a question. Do we know of other councils who have maybe approached their budgets in a similar way?
Through you, Mayor, none that I'm aware of. I spoke with CEOs of the M9 councils. I haven't canvassed or surveyed everyone, but no one that I've spoke to at the moment. Most councils are acknowledging that the past couple of years, with the rates cap being below CPI, plus for us councils, some expense is really going up by more than CPI, that they'll be looking for the full rates cap, and some of them are going to really struggle to continue to deliver the quality and availability of services to do that.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Crawford, then Councillor Baxter.
If I may ask a two-part question. So the rates cap that the state government has set is about 2.75. Where did inflation end? Was CPI actually 3.4 or 4? And additionally, we have very generous support packages for people who need to talk about their rates and that. Have we had much uptake of that in the last couple of years? Because we've had put aside a substantial amount of money to help people who need it.
Through you, Mayor. CPI currently is forecast above 4% for 23-24. That's usually the cost that's translated to budget 24-25. So that's what we use to compare against the rates cap. So above 4% compared to 2.75. That said, over the last 4 years, rates cap hasn't been matching CPI at all. In fact, I've got some stats here. Inflation has been around the 4.7% mark for the last 4 financial years, whereas the rate caps are only averaging 2.2%. So, essentially only 46% of the rates cap, but the rates cap's only 46% of inflation for the last 4 years.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. Can officers clarify the definition that we use for the word efficiency or efficiency savings? My understanding of it is that it's for us to be able to continue to deliver the same services for less money, but if that can be clarified.
See you.
Through you, Mayor, like put simply, it's more or the same for less.
Very, very simple answer. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any other questions? If not, Councillor Clark has put her motion, and I believe you'd like to move this. Do we have someone who's going to second it? Councillor Sierrakoff? All right. Councillor Clark, would you like to speak to your item?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Now we've finished with all the questions. I've brought this motion tonight in response to the cost of living crisis that we find ourselves in, and also the need to consider the impact of another full state government rate cap rise and the impact that will have on our residents. Last year we provided a 0.7% reduction in the rate cap to provide a modest reduction in rates for residents, and it was one of the first times, maybe the first, or definitely one of the first for a long time, where we've been able to address the high rates that is paid by residents in this municipality. The council has a revenue budget of for the rates of 131 million, as the motion outlines, and the motion asks to find a saving of 3.6 million to deliver a zero rate increase to residents that are doing it really tough. It represents a 1.6% of total current expenditure, which is a total of 223 million, which is a huge amount of money for the current year of 23-24. A principle here is that every time council spends $1, we're spending the residents' money, not the special interest groups, not everyone else here asking for money to be spent. We're spending the residents' money that they give to the council. And we should be asking ourselves, is this a service that residents need and expect from council? And if the answer to that is no, or it's nice for the community but not essential, or a special interest group needs the money to spend on their interests, then we should think about reducing the spending. Not eliminating, but reducing, trimming. One of the speakers suggested we all lost out by providing a 0.7% reduction, the inference being that council spending is more important than families' ability to spend their own money for their basic needs. It's far more important for residents to keep their money for their rent, their mortgages, their energy costs, than it is for council to spend more money on areas which are not essential services for our residents. When faced with deciding how to reduce expenditure, there's no need for large-scale cuts to deliver a $3.6 million saving. It's actually quite modest. We often get asked, councillors, where should these reductions come from? Well, I'm of the view that the CEO is best placed to review the departments and determine where the savings can be made with the least impact, carving out frontline services and focusing more on the non-essential services. There are a lot of things we provide in this community that are great to have. They're all great, but they're not essential in terms of providing for our residents when we actually take a good hard look at it. The officers, and as the CEO quite rightly mentioned, the officers have brought savings and they continue to look for savings. That's not in dispute. But there's more to be done, and CEOs of other businesses, like one of the speakers said today, talking about the challenging environment for their business, will need to tighten their spending across all types of businesses. One potential area of focus for council could be the duplication of state government, where we cross over with state government and federal government. That's just one suggestion. There are many areas where we invest and duplicate, and that maybe that doesn't achieve all that we need, but it might be a good place to start in terms of relieving the pressure on our residents from ongoing cost increases through rates. I appreciate that this is not an easy decision for councillors, but all of our residents require cost of living relief and reduction in our rates, and through that in our rents. Small changes in our priorities, not large scale. We don't need to upend everything, but small changes, small trimmings can enable us to deliver the quality services just with a cost balance for our residents. So that's why I brought the motion tonight, and I look forward to and hope that other councillors will support this motion for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sirikoff.
Thank you, Mayor. In June 2023, I spoke at a council meeting about our community coming out of COVID and how it was then difficult for them dealing with financial pressures, including increasing mortgage and rental costs due to the RBA delivering 10 consecutive rate rises, and this was impacting their capacity to pay their loans alongside of council rates. Unfortunately, the cost of living has got worse since June of last year, with the property owners or anyone with a loan now enduring not 10 but 13 consecutive rate rises. In Victoria, amidst this economic turmoil, one sector which is thriving is that of insolvencies. We cannot assume that all is rosy and thriving in the city of Port Phillip, where we may have that debt, where we may believe that debt-ridden residents and business owners have more to give. With the skyrocketing costs of living essentials, it is careless to entertain the notion of taxing our constituents' higher rates again. This applies to both homeowners and renters alike. If rates go up, then any increase is passed on by landlords to renters. We had a speaker, a landlord, last June saying this very message. All residents are facing costs of food, car fuel, education, medical support, household rising costs in food, for car fuel, education, medical support, household utilities and multiple insurance premiums increasing by up to 25%. At this week's Port Phillip Business Advisory Group meeting, some of those who attended spoke of customers more likely to visit eateries charging cheaper meals and cheaper drinks, and also customers are going out less frequently. Also, while a few new businesses are opening, there is still concern that more are closing due to increased state and excise taxes. It was highlighted that 3 businesses recently closed in Clarendon Street during these past 2 weeks. There are also the yearly highlights, such as the St Kilda Festival, which is a free event and is underpinned by the ratepayers. And there is also the Australian Grand Prix, which do provide a bit of a sugar hit to the local economy. But businesses are suffering on our high streets. If we could have more events like this, such as the St Kilda Festival and other events, it would be great. But this is these are expensive events that are provided by the council. These anecdotes are a few examples of the consequences of the compounding cost of living. There has been reported by the Australian Bureau of Statistics in November 2023 a collapse in disposable income, its largest ever decline this last financial year. Residents are tightening their belts, and so we should look to council to do the same. A collapse in disposable income by our residents means that they are not spending, they are focusing on what is really important to them, and that is to pay their own bills and council rates. Because of the compounding impact of the cost of living, including growing council rates, we must diligently seek savings when council savings within council budgets to alleviate the burdens of unnecessary spending during these still challenging economic times. As we also reside in the highest taxing state in Australia, let us not push our constituents to the brink of financial peril. Our focus should be on easing the strain on households during these rough economic times, not exacerbating it. There are those who seem to believe that we can simply ask for more from our struggling residents. Any increase in rates is simply not the equivalent to the cost of another cup of coffee on top of existing rates, as has been vocalised in a past meeting. Some residents have seen rate rises of between 10 to 30% in their council rates. There are also some who advocate for agendas that benefits a few at the expense of many. Council spending on such endeavours does not always line up with the needs of homeowners who just ask for reliable, efficient and consistent council services. With the never-ending cost of living pressures, homeowners try to prioritise their spending, with rates and daily costs taking precedence. Council resources should not be directed towards areas of lesser concern for homeowners, which they see is outside the remit of council. Unless addressed, the burden of rates will continue to increase. Implementing a rate freeze of 1.6 this year will have a minimal impact on the ongoing annual council budget of close to $250 million. If not voted up, it will elevate further distress within our community. The recent Suicide Prevention Australia Community Tracker reveals alarming increases in living distress among full-time workers and families, particularly amidst rising costs of living and mounting debt. In light of these challenges, it is incumbent upon us to act swiftly to ease the financial and mental distress faced by our residents. We must fulfil our duty to serve the community and not pursue political agendas at their expense. Therefore, I wholeheartedly support the motion for a rates freeze. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Councillor Crawford.
You know, I'm usually accused of being too feeling or too emotional. Let me tell you, I have some feels about this motion tonight. Mostly it ranges from incredulity to fury. So let me talk. This is going to be a long one, folks. Settle in. Firstly, let's talk about the errors of fact. There has been a rate discount due to the state government's rate cap for 8 years. Every council gives it 8 years. So to pretend that we haven't been, people not already get discounted rates, is actually false. But there's never any acknowledgement that there is that rates cap in place. We've been giving you, via the state government, a discount in your rates. Now, the disingenuous part is how rates are levied. It's about the rise in your property value as compared to all the others. And yes, there is a differential in how houses have gone in comparison to flats in this city. But then we also brought in a waste charge, which again redistributed some of that more to flats, the cost of rates, than to houses. So there's also... And then last year we gave you one as well. But there's no acknowledgement, there's no pretending, there's no acknowledgement by particular councillors or groups that we have already given it, and that the biggest determinant of your rates is your rise in property value. So I want to correct that error first. Now, the other thing is we actually have some of the most generous supports for people who are doing it tough in terms of your rates. And we have put aside, I think one year we put aside $700,000 for people. And basically, I think we might have, my memory, it might be $7,000 to $10,000. I think 3 or 4 people took it up. So people, if you're out there doing it tough, I'd hate to think suicide was on your mind. You need to call us. We have money aside to help you if you are genuinely in need. So to put that to bed, we have been there supporting you all the way. So let's take that off the table. Now, when we say it's just $3.4 million, that again is error of fact. With the way the rates are levied, and it's all very complicated, the equation. We are ripping off future councils and future residents $40 million. Now, $40 million goes a long way in infrastructure and service over the next 10 years. And future councils are going to need it given the increasing challenges we have ahead of us. That's on top of the $11 million we already wasted in the four. So that's $50 million. And I think someone said it was economic vandalism, budgetary vandalism, and I would agree. You can go, oh, it's not much, but it is a lot. Let's talk about the things we could cut in the next 10 years if we, or even next year for 3.4. I mean, there's so many that are not essential or are duplications. What about the Middle Park beach renourishment? It's not really a beach. Let's just not worry about it. There's $1 million there every couple of years. The Middle Park Library, which hardly gets utilised, let's cut that then. What about the air conditioning at Port Melbourne Town Hall? Not a necessity. I mean, it's not useful. We can't rent it out. But don't worry about that. There's about another $500,000 there. South Melbourne Town Hall, pretty sure that the costs are going to blow out there to renovate a town hall which is currently not able to be used. But don't worry about that because it's not really essential. We have St Kilda Town Hall. CCTV. Now, CCTV, that's a state government, police responsibility. You know, it's going to cost us about $500,000 to upgrade it. Just the ones we have, let alone putting any more. Let's give that back to the state. That could be out of the $3.4 million for next year. Funding activation on high streets, not really essential. Let's cut that. Supporting upgrades of high streets, they're all right. They're functional. Let's not worry about that. I'm sure that the peanut farm, our ovals, we've spent so much money on our ovals, upgrading to standards that, you know, that really councils shouldn't have to provide. Let's not do the peanut farm. We only did that a few years ago. Don't worry about those extra trees and health and wellbeing with climate change. The other thing we do, we reduce parking costs around certain high street areas to help encourage business, but that's not really essential. So let's up those rates again. Yeah, let's do that. I don't think the girls need that extra changing room at the Elwood Pavilion. There's $500,000 there. The Fishermans Bend Gymnastics Club. Now, we're going to do a business plan for that, but the actual build and buying land is probably $10 million, if not more. Not really essential. And out of that $40-50 million, we're in the forward estimates. We probably can't afford it anymore. All those buildings on the Elwood foreshore that are end of life, aren't accessible, need disability toilets, well, they'll just have to be pushed back another decade. The other thing that we do is we mow the nature strips, which are not our assets, more than often than we've got an arrangement with DOT. Let's scrap that one as well. Let's only clean the beaches every second day, maybe even once a week. I'm trying to think what else. There are so many things that we could, actually reduce that aren't essential. Oh, I know one. We just repainted a mural that was flashing green into residents' apartments. That wasn't our responsibility, but we spent $20,000 on it as well because that's what we do. That's what council's here for. There are so many things we could cut. The Seniors Festival, because that's not really essential either. Let's not buy any new library books because there's lots of there that people can read already. It sounds ridiculous, but that's the kind of thing, those are the choices we're about to make. $50 million in the forward estimates is a lot of money. That's a lot of infrastructure. Oh, dogs, dog parks, off-lead dog parks. That ain't happening. Sorry, folks. New open space, not sure we can afford it anymore. But that's actually the quantum of what we're talking about. $3.4 million sounds nice, but for most people it'll be $10 to $20, and for the really expensive properties who do proportionally pay a higher amount of tax, it might be a couple of $100 at the most. But what we are ripping off are future councils, future residents, current residents, to have the quality of services and infrastructure that we love and expect and why people move here. This is not a simple, just efficiency savings. The CEO has repeatedly told us that it is not possible without seriously having to look at all our services. I mean, St Kilda Fest, there's another one. Let's just, it's getting more expensive. Yeah, that off. St Kilda Triangle, business case, looking forward. Let's scrap that one as well. Not essential. So let's have a real conversation. Rates are there to provide the community collective infrastructure and services which we all value, different ones to varying degrees. We, ratepayers, whether they're through the renters or homeowners, get a discount every year because the state government for 8 years has rate capped. So you're already getting it. So let's stop this disingenuous conversation that we aren't doing it. If you are fortunate enough to have a high value property but you're having trouble paying your rates, come and talk to us, because we have things in place, but people have not been doing it. So tonight we heard a lot of things that people want. If we cut 3.4 million, can we just not afford them next year? We won't be able to afford them for the next decade and on. So let's please vote down this motion. It is not what we are on council for. There are too many things at stake that we need to fund that are important to our community, and it's not $20 in your pocket.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak next? Councillor Martin.
About 18 months ago, I seconded a motion that we have an audit of our budget expenses. Some of my colleagues on my right here thought I was a bit naughty, that I was actually suggesting we should go and have a look and could we justify what we spend. And we went through the process, and I think we were able to find $55,000 worth of savings out of our entire council budget, and that was 9 councillors workshopping for about 6 months. If it took us 6 months to find $55,000, I'm not sure our CEO can find in excess of $3 million in less than a month without referring back to councillors. So I think if this motion's carried, we've set the CEO an impossible task. It's not the way we should be budgeting. I have no issue with us sitting down as a council and saying, are there areas that we can make savings in? Absolutely, and we should be doing that. We went through the process 18 months ago. We couldn't find very much, but at least we tried. And if at the end of that we could find a way of coming in under the full rate cap, that'd be fantastic. I'm not sure we could, but if we could, that would be great. But to start out with saying there will be no increase to the rates at all sets us an impossible task. It makes the budgeting process a farce. Now, we've heard people express concerns about the imposition of people in, people like myself who live in a standalone home. I've done my sums. My rates are about $4,000 a year in my $1.8 million a year home. I'm one of the very, very lucky people in Port Phillip. When you get old, you get lucky. Mr. Lewis told us that instead of a 2.8% increase, I'd be paying a 1.9% increase. That's with the 2.8% rate cap. If you do that, 1.9% of 4K is not very, very much at all. It's a pittance. And I'm happy to pay that if it means that I can support a whole range of services, including all the services that Councillor Crawford has alluded to. Now, Councillor Sirikoff has talked about suicide. Suicide is a terrible, terrible thing. I've unfortunately worked as a school principal. I've had to deal with families who've suffered the aftermath of suicides. It's the last thing I'd like to be involved with. However, we are lucky that in Port Phillip we have some wonderful people who work really carefully with people who are struggling mentally to help them avoid. We're sitting up over there. We've got someone from the local men's shed. Give us a wave. Men's shed doesn't take a cent from our council at the moment. They've got over 200 men and women, many of whom they're the only outlet they get from either their home, or for those who are still in employment in their work, they're single, their families are broken up. The only time they get to socialise is through the men's shed. And we're chatting to the men's shed because they're concerned that they can't service their needs. And one day they may actually want to come along and ask council for a little bit of money to see if they can expand the premises they've currently got. They're not asking for that at the moment. But that's an organisation, without putting its hand out, that's doing its best to keep a lot of people in the city of Port Phillip in a state where they're not going to be considering suicide. And if they did come to us with some small request for support, and we had to say, I'm terribly sorry, we're not increasing rates here, we can't help those people who are in need, then we might be contributing to suicide, and then we'd have that on our consciences. So I would be really, really, really concerned if we start our budget process from a point where we're saying we are not going to increase the budget, we're not going to increase our rates at all. I'd rather start by saying, what do we need to spend? And if we can come in under the rate cap, well and good. If we can't, we'll still, and I doubt if we can, we'll still have some hard decisions to make, but at least we'll be able to look after as many people in the city of Port Phillip as we can. And for those people who are doing it tough in their houses like me, they're only going to be getting a 1.9% rate increase rather than 2.8, even if we go the full rate cap. So I think they're doing quite well out of this.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment.
Thank you. Do we have the wording of your amendment?
The wording of the amendment is now on the board, I believe, and I'll read it out. That any reduction in spending in the 2024-25 budget of $3.6 million and subsequent rates freeze be subject to Councillor Clark securing agreement of 5 or more councillors at a future council meeting for any proposed spending or expenditure reductions before the revised budget is prepared by officers.
I think we'll need to take...
So it should be dot point 2 and then 2 becomes 3. Or...
Yeah, we'll get to that formatting. Do we need to take an adjournment? Adjournment? Yep. We're going to take a little adjournment to consider this. Not consider it, but to just flush it out.
Sorry, just to be clear, dot point 2 can become dot point 3, so it doesn't need to be crossed out. Yeah, that could just go down to 3 and 3 becomes 4, etc., etc.
All right, so time-wise, what are we at? It's, look, this is going to take how long it takes. I'm sorry to not give better. We'll try to do it in 10 minutes. So please come back in the room about 10 o'clock. Yep, all right, we're going to resume. Spot on 10. That's impressive. All right, I've sought governance advice, and I'm going to refer to the head of governance to provide more information on why this won't be allowed.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Looking at the governance rules, 26.3, an amendment must not be the negative of or substantially contrary to the motion. If an amendment effectively negates the substance of the motion, it's ruled to be an alternative motion shall only be considered in the event the motion is lost. In this case, with the notice of motion, the governance rules are silent on alternative notices of motion, so in this case we couldn't refer to that, and I understand that therefore your ruling would be required if we just go back to the notice of motion as it exists.
As it exists, okay. So in the process, would you like to speak to the substantive or...
I will speak to the substantive motion once, I guess, we revert back to it. Thank you. We did this once before where we said to officers, come to us with a whole heap of savings. They did. And, you know, they were started off with a couple of $1 million worth of what officers thought were spending that perhaps we could review and look at, and I think we whittled that away to about $75,000 worth of savings because nothing on the list could get the agreement of 5 people. And the intention of my amendment was I want us as 9 councillors to do the work, and I want us as 9 councillors to come up with what it is we agree we should not be spending before we set the officers the task of going away and doing all this work again. I just don't think that's the way we should be governing this city. It's up to us to find these efficiency savings if they're out there, and there are tons of things that I think is completely unnecessary spending, and I would be all over a zero rate rise budget if you would all just listen to me and agree to stop spending when I tell you to stop spending. Unfortunately, I can't get 5 of you to agree to that. And that's probably the issue we've had here, is that there's never 5 people to agree on what we shouldn't, to agree on something to stop spending. And we've had that issue for a long time. I don't think it's fair that we put officers through a whole heap, another big long process, knowing that we get to the end of it and none of it will get the agreement of 5 councillors. We need to put the cart before the horse. The 5 of us, 5 of the 9 of us, it doesn't matter which 5 it is. If you want to stop spending on CCTV, Tim's all over that. You know, it doesn't always have to be the same 5 on anything. Put up whatever it is you want to stop spending on and see if you can get 5 people to agree before we give the officers the task of doing a whole heap of additional work in addition to the current budget process and all the other pieces of work we've got on our plate right now. They're actually quite busy, so I don't see the point in setting them tasks that in the end will amount do nothing, I suspect. And that's where this motion, if it was successful, would probably wind up. So I can't see myself supporting it. And I strongly urge the 9 of us, if you've got efficiency savings, circulate them. Let us all know what they are, and I'll support anything that I think is reasonable. And I'm happy to put any savings towards a reduction in rates next year. I'll put that on the table now. Any savings, you come up with 3.6 and I'll support them. I'm happy to go with a zero rate rise budget, but it needs 5 before it can progress. I think we need to get 5 on whatever spending we agree to cut before we head that down that path and set and create work for officers. So unfortunately, I can't support this.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Sorry, Mayor, I thought you were going to say something before.
Oh, I was, but you can go first.
Okay. So this motion, when looking at it, I decided it was a three-eyed monster. 3 eyes, irresponsible, impossible, potentially illegal, to implement this motion. To abandon the budget consultation process in this way, to go against the clear advice of our CEO, who I really sympathise with tonight, because this is a CEO who does his best to try and lift up councillors and help them to do what they want to achieve on council and provide the best advice that he can. And he's in a position where he actually has to say publicly, I'm sorry, councillor, I can't do this. I can't do what you're asking me to do, which is a horrible position to actually put this CEO in, and another reason why this is a really irresponsible motion. To say that we can cut rates and not cut services, this is the lying to our community is an utter lie. We've received all of the evidence to the contrary, that the only way that we can reduce revenue is through service cuts. And Councillor Bond is right. We've looked at potential service cuts, and my recollection of that process was that even if all of the cuts that 4 councillors were able to agree on could be implemented, it still wouldn't amount to a full zero rate for that year. I think it came close, but didn't quite get up there. So this isn't even a situation of if certain councillors had their way. It's not actually possible to continue the services as we provide them, and that so many people in our community rely on. And also to do this zero rate rise. It's a fairy tale, it's a lie to our community, and it's completely unfair to continue to try to sell them that lie. Not only that, but we know the negative effects that would happen here. More than 50% of our community are renters. We know that if there was a zero rate rise, that benefit back to the landowners would not be passed on to them. I appreciate that Councillor Sirikoff has once met someone who said that he would do that, and that's fantastic. But I don't believe it, and B, it's shown in very clear economic evidence that does not happen. If people are doing it tough and need that rate cut, why would they then give that away to someone else? None of this actually hangs together. And it comes back to the core issue that we have on this council, which is that some councillors ran on a platform of so-called financial responsibility. They told the community that there was huge amounts of fat in the council budget, that all they needed to do was get onto council and they could find these savings. They didn't have to touch any of our services. Everything would be fine, but we could just get rid of lots of things that we're spending money on that we don't need to spend money on and that people wouldn't notice. But what we've actually found is that we're in our 4th year on council. We've had councillors, particularly ROP councillors on our council for that entire time, who participated in multiple budget processes. We have had a line-by-line cost review process. One of the ROP councillors sits on the Audit and Risk Committee. At no point have these people been able to actually identify what are the cuts that you would need to make to actually make this happen. And year on year, it gets more and more insulting to our community for them to continue to insist that you could just give money back from rates without having to cut any services when all evidence throughout all of this time has been completely to the contrary. And this is a political game. This is playing politics. This is knowingly lying to the community and telling them something that you know not
Point
to
of
be
order,
true.
Mayor.
What is the point of order?
Where is the lie in what I've said?
Can you clarify the line, please? What? Yeah, okay, so it's clarifying. Sorry, I missed the line that you said there. Can you repeat what it...
You want me to tell you where I lied? It should probably be where...
You said
Councillor
lie
Clark
or
to say.
line? What did you say? Where's the line?
Where is the lie? Sorry,
lie.
in
Sorry,
what I said.
The line. Where's the lie? This is a hard one for me to judge on.
I can explain if you want. I mean...
I will ask... All right. If you're referring to individual councillors and that you're saying that they've said a lie, this is going to be a bit tricky for them to prove themselves, etc. So I think it's safest if you could keep moving with your thing, and finish up your speech, please.
Sure, okay. And look, just to clarify, I think that saying one thing when you've received the best advice possible to the contrary and continuing to say it, I think is a deliberate untruth, but I understand that the word lie, might be offensive, so I'm happy to withdraw that, sure. But I do think it's a lazy political game, and I really do feel that throughout this process, these councillors, they ran on empty slogans like that to get elected in the first place. And I guess maybe I'll just chuck a slogan back at you. Have the guts to name your cuts.
All right. All right. Would anybody like to speak next? Councillor Nyagui?
I've heard some articulate reasons why this is a strange notice of motion tonight. I must say I did scratch my head at this motion when it first came to me, because my first thought was, aren't we in the middle of a budget process right now where we sit down as the 9 councils with officers a couple of times before the budget comes out to the community, where we actually have these conversations about what we want to put in the budget? And so I found it a bit strange to suddenly have part of the budget process going to the council chamber before we've actually had a chance to discuss it as councillors. And I guess the other frustration I have is we've already had this conversation many times, but I'll put that to one side. What we're asking our officers to do tonight, apparently, is to, in the next 29 days, find $3.6 million of so-called efficiencies in our spending without cutting quality or the availability of services, to then put it out to the community for a rate freeze. Of course, it's not 3.6, it's 3.6 plus the 10-year outlook, which is a heavier lift, especially in the context where we know inflation is going up ahead of our rate cap. I think it's one of those things, I think, if you're not inside government land, and I hear it all the time, people will just say, why do the rates go up? I don't like the rates. And I understand people feel that way. They say similar things about, why are there weeds here? Why is there rubbish there? Why haven't council done this, that and the other? And I understand all those frustrations. It's one of the reasons I ran for council. But I think it's incumbent on the 9 of us to, once we are elected, educate ourselves about how government works. It's something that I think I've tried to do as much as I can in my short time in public life. I think I've spent more time working in government than my colleagues have, excluding our actual council experience. I might be wrong on that. And I worked at a state and a federal level in different roles through cabinet processes and other things. And the thing that I always have at the front of my mind is how we, achieve the outcomes and the aims we have that we put forward to our community, but do that in a way that's actually practical for our staff. I understand those frustrations. We all sit on the sidelines and go, why does blah cost so much? Surely there must be some wastage somewhere. Why do all these things end up adding up to such a large number? And I understand that frustration, but once you're actually in the room, and that's the job of the 9 of us, to actually read the budget in detail, and we went through the budget I think, was it 2 weeks ago now? And we were actually sitting, going literally line by line, going through fees to consider, and then going through capital works opportunities and discussing whether we thought these are the things we wanted to put forward next year. And our Councillor Bond aptly pointed out there were not 5 councillors saying, you know what, we'll just have to cut that next year. We can't do it. That oval we agreed to upgrade, we're not going to do that next year. We're not going to do those footpath upgrades. We're not going to, I don't know, maybe we're not going to process as many planning applications. I don't know, just don't renovate your house. Come back next year maybe. I didn't hear that from my colleagues. And as they, I would hope, would know by now, the thing about rates, it's not like we're actually raising taxes every single year. That's how people like to frame the rate increase. But ultimately, you can't stand still on a moving train. The rate pool is a fixed amount of money, but inflation goes up every year. Our costs go up every year. We have to pay more for staff. All the materials on all our building projects cost a bit more every year. And so if we just freeze the number as it is, it's not that we're suddenly not doing all these extra vanity projects next year. We're actually just spending less on all the core services. And so to say that we can do that without cutting services is just, in my view, a fallacy. It's a lie. It's not possible. I don't know how the hell you would do that. And the fact that we're talking about this after we've had a cost review, and I didn't get to go through it, unfortunately, I'm very sad, but the other 8 of you did, and apparently, after going through that 6-month process, we could only identify, I think it was $90,000 of cuts, and then we didn't even go through with them all. These are really difficult questions, and I think they are questions that the 9 of us need to step up to the plate on. Unless we honestly believe that our staff are hiding millions of dollars of wasted money, which I don't accept that in the end. Is there wastage? I'm sure that there is somewhere. And I think we always have to keep looking for it. And I think it's important that every time we read a budget, every time we read a council report and a briefing, all 9 of us have our glasses on, we're reading in detail and thinking about the components of that cost. But to just throw up a number at our council staff and say, do this, it's just completely unworkable and unreasonable. And I just don't see how this would ever be implemented in practice. And we've got the advice from our CEO saying as much. And we've had that advice in every briefing I've been in, and I'm reliably told that before I was elected to council, we had the same conversations. So this is the 4th budget process we've had. We've had the same conversations, and we go round and round and round. These magical efficiency savings are just not going to appear. So I urge my colleagues, if you have things you think we need to cut, if you're seeing fat and wastage in our council organisation, please let us know. Those are things we should definitely talk about and find ways to rein in. But if you don't see that, then I just don't understand how you can seriously suggest cutting that much money out of the budget without the matching savings.
Thank you. All right, I think we're coming down to the last people. Okay, Councillor Pearl.
Thanks very much. Just quickly, I suspect this motion won't get up based on the vibe of the thing and what I'm hearing, but councillors, you're all right in some respects and you're all wrong. We're going to need to do this anyway. So even if this fails, the financial reality that you're being presented by your officers is that we're going to have to go through this process and make very difficult decisions to cut probably an amount not dissimilar to that based on what the forward estimates are already telling you. So the good thing that will come out of debating this motion here this evening is a realisation that there is a very difficult job ahead of us and it needs a collegial process with some leadership on this council to actually come up with some difficult decisions that will have to be sold to a community in an election year. That is a very difficult task for any elected representative at any level of government. We're not a government, we're a local council. But it's Herculean and it's going to take unity.
Point of order, man.
Sorry, go on.
What's the point of order?
This is an error of fact.
Oh, we are not a government. We are local government, but we are a council.
Literally.
Thank you for clarifying.
We don't form a government.
Hey guys,
we form a
Act is
council.
called a local government.
Can we stop this back and forth? That's actually not part of our governance rules. You've asked for a point of order. You didn't pause, first of all, to me considering. I'd like you to clarify. You've clarified. Let's keep going. Let's go.
We are not a government. We are a council. We don't operate anything like a Westminster government operates. Therefore, we have to be even more collegial in our approach because unlike a government that has a Prime Minister or a Premier, there is a level of enforcement that can be made, and usually a majority of Parliament that allows it to be passed. That doesn't exist in the local government level at all. So it's going to take collegial approach. It's going to take a majority of councillors being able to work together to solve a very complex budget problem. We're already going to have to do this. So even if this fails, buckle up and get ready, because there's some very hard decisions coming through the budget process. Councillor Clark, thank you for foreshadowing your motion and foreshadowing some of the hard work that's already ahead of us. I suspect it's going to fail here this evening, but we're going to have to do this anyway.
All right, I'll take my turn. No doubt there's a cost of living crisis, and I think that you're trying to address that in ways that you think you can make impact, and I appreciate that it is definitely the time. We are seeing large increases in insurance companies, utilities. They're not asking for community consideration. They do what they need to cover their costs and their profits. This isn't a big business. We don't have the freedoms like the private sector in approaching it this way. So although I see that 1.6%, or what equates to 3.6 million here, is a small amount, and across many departments that's, chops up to be maybe reasonable size that people say that makes sense, but it definitely is not the way to go about it. So I really appreciate the bridge that Councillor Bond was trying to build there, and that Councillor Pearl has also alluded to, that this is on us as councillors to take on. We did try the cost review, and obviously that didn't amount to much. And going to take the smallest little moment to say it's like a family holiday. It'd be a lot cheaper if everyone just did what one person wanted, but when you go with yes, exactly. We'd have a lot of efficiencies if somebody here gets to make the choices. But when it comes to us all enjoying life like a family holiday, if we do a little bit that everybody really wants, we can all come home saying we had a good time. So we consider in our council people who are really into the climate, and people who are really into sports and ovals, people who are into art, people who are into maternal child health and children's services. We have so many different things that people's passions. Those aren't passion. What were they? I don't know. These aren't little projects, that is society. And it would be easy for us to say, I don't like that, let's not pay for that. But to get everybody out of line, we have a great council here. You've got divided views, which is really challenging to work through, but it represents our community well, that we all have different areas that we are passionate about as our community is. So it is very challenging to find these savings, but we do try. We try over and over again. And I acknowledge that this council has done an impact on rates. It could be far worse than it is. That change from NAV to CIV. We've done the waste levy, which made a balance back from houses to apartments, leveling that a little bit more. We didn't take the full rate rise last year. We're looking at the derelict land this year. And every year we're doing the efficiency savings. So I do think that we're being very responsible and honest with our community about things. And that's why we go through these budget processes. And any time that we are going to make a cut to a service, we have to come out and talk to you, and we hear, and that makes some people very upset about certain things, but we're taking into consideration for the greater good of our whole community. So I will not be supporting this tonight, but I very much do welcome any suggestions where we could come together to meet the challenges, rise to the occasion of our ongoing cost issues, and continuing delivering for our community. Councillor Clark, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I've listened to the comments from fellow councillors, and I don't disagree with Councillor Bond about the challenges of finding savings. That's been evident for some time. I see this discussion as part of the budget process, which some of my other councillors don't, which is their choice. To have this discussion in public, as opposed to other years where through process and through timeframes, when it comes to wanting to have this discussion, it somehow doesn't end up happening. And then you've got to go to consultation, and then there's materiality issues and so forth. So I respect the council's processes, but to have this discussion in public for the public to understand where rates and what we can do about rates or what we can't, and hear the debate, I think is important. I note the comments of the Mayor as well, and understand where those comments are coming from. However, to me, it sums up exactly what Council's expenditure shouldn't be, areas of passion. But it should be essential services, and I think I understand what those comments were meant, and that's absolutely, I agree with them. We have too much expenditure that is not correctly focused on what the services are that we need from a local government. We've heard quite a scare campaign from Councillor Crawford. The sort of areas she raised, it's that sort of thinking and a focus that had that been brought during the expenditure review we did last year, we may well have been able to cut expenditure. So perhaps just a year too late. As Councillor Sirikoff talked to, the money that we're not potentially going to give back if this motion doesn't succeed impacts our very heart of our local businesses and the economy, and some of that money may well have been spent in our local area and our local businesses. So there's a lot more that I could have said. In the interests of time, I'm not going to take up too much more time of the council. I think Councillor Pearl took the words out of my mouth that I had noted to say, that the irony of tonight's debate is that regardless of the outcome of this motion, tough expenditure decisions are going to have to be made, whether the councillors like it, whether the residents like it, and the only debate's going to have to be which areas. And we are going to be forced to have a look at our priorities and what we deem to be 1 to 1 million, if that's how you want to look at it, because you can see the trajectory of where this is going, and to the very point that some residents made, the rate cuts, things like that, expenditure is going to have to be cut. That will be forced on this future councils potentially. So in closing, based on the comments that I've heard from my fellow councillors, it would seem that this motion isn't going to be supported. I think the residents will be disappointed to hear that councillors are going to potentially vote for more endless spending, and I think it'll be a disappointment for them that this motion may not potentially be supported. But thank you for the debate anyway.
All right, let's take that to the vote. All those in favour? Yep. All those opposed?
Division, please, Mayor.
All right, ask for division, so all those in favour? So we got Councillor Clark, Councillor Sirikoff, and Councillor Pearl. Pardon? Oh, okay, so, all right, and all those against? Councillor Crawford, Baxter, did I even say the words out loud? Sorry, and Martin, Consolo, Niagui, and Bond. Thank you, so that fails. Thank you all for the respectful debate, mostly. The next on to item 15, this is reports by councillor delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports from councillor delegates tonight? Yeah, next time. Items of urgent business. Councillors, do you have any items of urgent business I don't already know about? No. All right, councillors, we do have one confidential report listed on the agenda, being 17.1, the independent waste review. Does she have to say conflict again now or later? In the meeting. You'll say the conflict later, by the way. I now call on a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members of the public. Thank you, Councillor Martin, and Councillor Niagui, to consider these confidential items. We'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Councillors, we will now conclude the public part of this meeting. I advise members of the public that there is no further open items to be discussed. This will be the conclusion of the public meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight in person and online.